finally. Sergeant at Arms will please secure the doors. Members, please take your seats. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. President.
All right, we will substitute the invocation from this morning for this evening's Legislative Days invocation. Has everyone recorded their presence? Double check, please. Has everyone? If so, the clerk will take the call. With 40 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland is now in session. Any announcements before we jump into things today? Any announcements? No? All right. Without objection, we'll waive the reading of the journal from the prior legislative day. Let's go ahead. We have a quick fix here. We have a slight mistake in the prior session. So Majority Leader is going to move to reconsider the vote by which we special ordered House Bill 592. Is that right, Madam Majority Leader?
That's exactly right, Mr. President. I would move that we reconsider the vote on
House
Bill 592.
The special order. Are there any objections to the
special order
reconsider the vote? If not, all in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The motion is reconsidered. The clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 592, Delegate Jacobs, Deer Management Permit, Hunting on State Land Leased by Permit Holder, Authorization.
House Bill 592 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 42 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 592, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. All right, we've got a message from the House. This is number 6. Clerk, read the message.
Senate Bill 5, Senator Patterson, General Provisions, Commemorative Days, Tuskegee Airmen Commemoration Day.
Majority Leader moves so be considered the reading of the bills. These are passed by yeas and nays. We've got another one here, number 7. Clerk will read the bills.
Senate Bill 222, Senator Ferguson, Baltimore City Board of License Commissioners, licensee hours of operation and enforcement.
Majority Leader moves so be considered the reading of the bills, passed by the yeas and nays. We have another message from the House, number 32. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 269, Delegate Bartlett, Juvenile Law, Child Interrogation Protection Act Rules.
Majority Leader moves so be considered the reading of the bills. They will be referred to the Standing Committee on Rules. We have some unfinished business from the last session. This is report number 44 out of Education, Health, Environmental Affairs. Are we ready for that one, Mr. Chairman? All right, clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 17, Delegate Prolakovich Carr, Campaign Finance, Recurring Contributions and Donations, Requirements Favorable.
All right, Chair recognizes the Vice Chair of the Committee as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know how sometimes you guys, when you make a contribution to a nonprofit or sometimes to a candidate, it says, do you want to make this a one-kind contribution or do you want to do it every month? And there's usually a checkbox. This makes it clear that for our campaigns, for political campaigns, that you can't have the default box be checked. So if somebody wants to opt in and check the box, that's fine, but that they should not have to pay attention to finding the box that is pre-checked in order to uncheck them. There were no amendments to this bill, so I move the adoption of the favorable report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Chair recognizes the minority whip on the report.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a good bill overall, and I support it. I think it's time it's good that we're clarifying that part of the law. This mostly deals with online donations, obviously, because it's hard to have a recurring bank draft. So this wasn't a problem until probably the last maybe 10, 15 years, but it's become a bigger thing in politics to have recurring donations. So my one question was, when it talks about returning the donations, if you take too much money, if they exceed their maximum, which can happen at times, it says you have to obviously you have to return the money if you take more money than you're allowed to take. So if somebody was contributing to a state senate campaign and over the course of a 4-year cycle, somebody gets up over the $6,000 max donation because they contribute $100 every so often, and eventually it adds up. It says you have to return the offending donation, which correct. Do you have to return the whole amount to them, or do you have to return it minus whatever the fee was online?
The latter. No, not the fee online. So let's say I want to give $100 to my favorite candidate for governor, and I want to do that once. And let's say it happens 5 more times, and I notice $500 on my credit card. I only intended to give 100. So that campaign would need to return $400 to me, and it would show up as a
Right.
as a debt until such return was made.
So that's what the bill is speaking to. I was wondering if okay, then that answered my question. I wondered if it also addressed if somebody gives you more money and they exceed $6,000 and you have to return the donation, but it isn't speaking to that. This
really
is only,
isn't that. It's
No.
really the opt-in, opt-out on recurring contributions.
was just curious. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator.
All right, on the report, any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Chair recognizes the senator from District 9. Oh, all right. If not, House Bill 17 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 147, Delegate Charkoudian, Maryland Farms and Family Fund, Maryland Food and Agricultural Resiliency Mechanism Grant Program, and Maryland Farm to School Meal Grant Pilot Program, alterations and establishment, favorable with one amendment.
Whew. Chair recognizes the senator from District 9 as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. As amended, this is the cross-file of Senate Bill 121 is exactly the same as this body passed unanimously. There is one committee amendment which conforms this bill to the Senate cross-file. I urge for the adoption of the committee amendment and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the one committee amendment is adopted. On the amended report, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 147 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 227, Delegate Harrison, State Government Legal and Employee Holiday, Juneteenth, National Independence Day.
House Bill 227, Chair recognizes Senator from Prince George's as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill established Juneteenth, National Independence Day, as a state legal holiday and a state employees holiday on June 19. The bill also repeals the requirement that the governor annually proclaim June 19 as Juneteenth National Freedom Day. The bill takes effect June 1, 2022. There were no amendments, no financial impact. I move for adoption of favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. On the report, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 227 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 511, Delegate B. Barnes, University of Maryland Institute for Public Leadership, establishment, favorable.
Chair recognizes the vice chair as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill is substantially identical, but not completely, to the bill that we passed unanimously that creates a leadership program at the University of Maryland in the Public Policy Division. There were no amendments. Move adoption of the favorable report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. On the report, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 511 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. All right, we're going here. All right, we've got a layover calendar number 52. This is a Senate bill. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 833, Senator Feldman, Cannabis, Legalization and Regulation. Questions on the adoption of the committee amendments and the favorable report.
All right, question is on the four committee amendments. Any discussion? Chair recognizes the senator from the 29th district on the amendments.
I did have a question about the bill.
The floor leader yield for a question. Appears so. Senator may proceed.
Yes, sir. Thank you. My question had to do, I was trying to read the bill and keep up with the fact that some people are better gardeners than others. And, you know, some people grow their tomato plants really well and some people don't. And it looked like in the bill that you were allowed personal use, possession up to 2 ounces of marijuana.
Right, so we have, we do provide in this legislation for some home cultivation. I would say that relative to other states and relative to some of the other bills, it's a very modest amount, relatively speaking, but yes, that's accurate. There is a small amount of home cultivation that's permissible here.
And that was my question, having worked in that field for quite a while.
Okay, can I just clarify one thing? Having said that, there's a number of parameters within that framework. Number one, it can't be in public view. It's got to be have a security lock. It's got to be outside the view of folks. It can only be 21 or older. If you look at that provision, so there's a bunch of guardrails within this small amount of home cultivation that's permissible. And 2 plants, by the way, is also within that same frame.
So that was a question. In one
Yes.
part of the bill, it referred to 4 plants.
No,
and,
that,
and then
oh.
it referred to 2.
Right. So that the bill as was amended and changed, the current bill is 2 plants. So yes, we're again, I'm going to come back to the main theme here. At some point in the future, post maybe July 2023, when there's a marketplace and we've done all that, maybe, you know, we revisit some of these numbers. But I think the consensus within the committee, within the House, and perhaps here is we're going to start very modestly. And so yes, so the bill that is on the floor has been reduced down to that smaller plant number.
So having watched marijuana grow for many years and seen it grown, right, I mean, those of us at 495 that drive behind the blue IKEA building, that draw behind it, you know, every year is completely full of marijuana grown by the state of Maryland. And the average yield on those plants is a pound per plant when you're taking it in the bud form. And so my question is, you grow 2 plants, you have 2 pounds of bud that you harvest, but I think the personal use said 2 ounces. And my question was, I didn't want to turn these people into criminals just for what we said that they could grow.
I mean, we had no testimony. I mean, I don't doubt, we had no testimony that that would yield anything close to that. I mean, what's that? Yeah, I mean, this is, again, home cultivation within your own home. I mean, we don't have laws on the books. I mean, yeah, I mean, whatever you would grow within this 2 plants, I have no doubt, we didn't have testimony about what 2 plants could yield. You can't take it out of your house, though. I mean, just the point, it's home cultivation. You can't take it out on the street. Back to the gentleman from, you know, the minority leader. I mean, the moment you would leave your house with that, you'd have a problem. You'd be subject to a whole bunch of other laws, and criminal and otherwise. So this is home cultivation, small amounts. I don't know about the plant yield on 2 plants. I can't answer that. I don't have that knowledge. What I will say is that relative to other states that do allow 6, 8, 10 plants, relatively speaking, we were trying to keep this very, very modest and low. So not that that's persuasive to you, but that is a fact.
And actually, and that's where I just didn't want to make people that really are good gardeners into criminals right off the bat. And I'll have to say, from working it for a lot of years, I can show you plenty of pictures where 1 plant is much bigger than 2 or 3 of us standing together, right? I mean, and that's just a good gardener. And so that's you know, what I was getting at, that 2 ounces is a very small amount.
It is small, and but again, if you were to grow something with the plant and transition to any other number of activities, then you would be subject to our criminal laws if you went past that 2.5 ounces that I mentioned earlier. So I'm not sure if this is being responsive to this line of questioning, but hopefully it's helpful.
Well, no, I was just figuring, you know, I thought everybody'd be visiting me for my pool. You know, now to be for my gardening skills.
I don't know. I'm not sure that was a question. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Probably
Yes.
a safe bet. All right, Chair recognizes the senator from the 34th District.
Thank
on
you,
the-
President. Yes, if the floor leader would yield for a couple of questions.
Appears so. Senator may proceed.
Trusted colleague here, Chair of EHE, is looking at a website, and the yield on a plan is substantially less than what you were claiming, but I don't know the veracity of that website. I just want to make the point that that's subject of some dispute, this pound that could yield from a plant. It's maybe substantially less according to the chair of EHE's website, but that's not testimony in the committee, and I just want to make it clear.
There's no doubt, when you're talking about stuff called homegrown, right, that people don't fertilize, don't do anything else, that I totally agree. Cultivators, completely different story.
Well, this is not, cultivation is a
All right, well,
whole
let's
different thing.
just,
Yes,
senator from the 34th has the floor.
yes.
Thanks, Mr. President. Looking at the criminal criminal procedure section of the bill, and it says that I just want to make sure I'm reading this right, because it provides that for distribution and manufacturing, those are both misdemeanors, and then police shall issue citation only. Correct?
Well, it depends on the quantity.
That's my question. Where is
okay,
that
so
in?
well, if it's under 2.5 ounces, first of all, it depends on the time here. We have this gliding path to July 1st of 2023. If it's under 2.5 ounces, even from January 1st of 2023 to July 2023, yes, it would be a civil citation. After July 2023, if you're in possession of more than that, then you're into the misdemeanor category. And so I'm not sure where you're reading from, but that would then put you in potentially the possession with intent to distribute category and subject you to misdemeanor and perhaps up to 3 years in jail. Under current law, that same category would be a felony and 5 years. So it is reduced under this particular legislation.
Right, but it appears under the bill that there would be no, I mean, if you're distributing a large bag of marijuana, or you're distributing, or you're distributing, 6 large bales of marijuana, you're still a misdemeanor, and it's a citation offense.
Yeah, maybe I'll yield to, there was this conversation about JPR, and I think we've got two experts on this. I'd certainly yield to the vice chair or the senator from the 41st to perhaps assist the finance committee on this one.
Vice chair of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. So where in the bill are you looking at?
Sure, and unfortunately, I don't have any page numbers on this reprint I'm looking at, but it's the piece on the criminal law article that's 4101, I believe it is, towards the end of the bill, and it specifically provides for distribution and manufacturing, and it states in the bill that there are no quantities specified. We just simply say that distribution and manufacturing are misdemeanors, and in either case, it's a shall issue a citation. It's a must issue citation, is the way the bill's written. And my concern is that certainly I would have no problem with that if the manufacturer is, you're supposed to have 2 plants, but you had 5 plants, or if the distribution is, well, you didn't have 2 ounces, you had twice the legal amount for possession or whatever, or you were selling to your neighbor a bag of marijuana. I have no problem with that. My concern is that we don't put limits on that. So it just appears my reading of the bill, if my distribution is I'm selling, a truckload full of bales of marijuana, or if I'm manufacturing, my manufacturing isn't just a couple extra plants, but in fact, I've got 10 acres that in either event, I'm subject to a misdemeanor, and the only thing the police can do is issue a citation, which of course I will take on my Nevada driver's license and promptly disappear from the state of Maryland. So I'm just trying to understand if that was the intent, or if maybe I'm missing something, that there's some other provision of the law that relates to super large quantities of manufacturing or distribution.
Referenced this earlier when we were talking with the minority leader. I mean, once you get, I mean, there is, and I don't have all the sites, but we have a completely separate category that deals with manufacturing cannabis. And again, the sale outside of medical, I mean, you know, when you start talking about selling, we don't have legal adult use sales happening yet. And so therefore you are subject to a whole range of other provisions in the code. So when you talk about manufacturing, number one, that's different than intent to distribute. That is a heightened, I don't know exactly where you're looking. And then beyond that, obviously sale outside of regulated medical cannabis market is not permissible in the state of Maryland right now.
I understand, but this
So
bill
that
assumes-
would be illegal. So you're talking about quantities is specifically where the quantity break up between 2.5 and intent to distribute. I'm not sure because there's
Sure.
again searching
Sure.
for counsel to maybe
It's on
assist.
section 5602 of the criminal law article, that it talks about distribution, and then it also talks about manufacturing, and in either case, it's a misdemeanor offense, and in either case, shall issue a citation. And I don't see anything that would deal with large quantities or give the court any discretion to say, I mean, it's a misdemeanor regardless, which would be certainly appropriate for small quantities. I just don't see any exception in here if my sale or distribution is for a very large quantity.
Okay, well, we're struggling to find an exact site. I'm very confident that when we're talking about larger quantities, you're going to be subject to criminal sanctions and criminal law and probably
Well, you were
felonies.
before,
I'm
but they're
looking for a
gone.
site.
We just changed, this bill changes
Well,
that.
that's you're citing to a very specific section of the criminal article, not the entire body. I'm at a loss to point to a specific site on larger quantities.
All right, let's hear from the Vice Chair of Judicial Proceedings.
Thank you, Mr. President. We do have a site on the quantities. So 5613 is for Kingpin. 5612 of the criminal law article is for volume dealers. That's for 50 pounds or more.
So there's a whole separate provision for 50 pounds or more.
That's correct.
Would that be for both distribution and manufacture?
I believe so.
Okay, so that's where we would charge those.
Right. Yes. Yes, you would charge under separate statute.
Okay, so anything short of that, it would still be a misdemeanor with a citation.
So just to be clear, the method of charging and the nature of the charge, felony versus misdemeanor, or the amount of time is separate. So the nature of this would stay a misdemeanor, and how it would be charged would be through citation under the bill in front of us.
Right, so anything under 50 pounds would be a citation for either distribution or manufacture. It would be a misdemeanor, and it would be a citation only. I mean, my concern is you're stopped and you show your Nevada driver's license and you're traveling through the state of Maryland and you got 49 pounds of marijuana in your car, and the only thing the officer can do is issue a citation like it was a speeding ticket. It's not an arrestable offense. And then you go on your merry way and you're gone.
So under that example, they could be charged with PWID, possession with intent to distribute.
But this says that, well, of course you had possession, you were distributing it, but in either event, it's a misdemeanor and a civil citation.
I think.
Okay. Oh,
Yep,
would
so
you
I think
yield?
Let's yield to the Vice Chair of Finance.
Yeah, and I apologize for the confusion. There wasn't a lot of testimony. Okay, just to be clear, that part of the criminal code that you're talking about, we inserted so that it was consistent with everything else in the legislation, so that if you were in these smaller possession amounts, that absent additional evidence, it would be lowered to misdemeanor 3 years. But told by counsel, that was simply to conform that with the other portions of the bill, that in fact, if there is other evidence of other any other evidence that you've intended to distribute larger quantities, that there is additional criminal sanctions. And I don't know the sentencing, the time, felony levels and all the rest, and if that's,
Well, what they're saying
yeah.
to me is it's over 50 pounds
well,
or
50 pounds, but between 2.5 ounces and 50 pounds, I think that there's a whole body of law in between.
there
Section
was.
the section you're referring to is specifically, yeah, then we've got dealer laws that are on the books, criminal laws. I mean, I don't have the treatise in front of me here, but I think that your focus on that particular section is simply those provisions that we were trying to conform in those lower levels in the intent to distribute world.
No, I got that, but these are the
Yeah, simple possession. We're talking simple possession with no other.
Yeah.
No,
No, not just simple.
attempt.
This is distribution and manufacture. This is not simple possession. These are the sections in this current bill, not on simple possession. I have no problem with those. It's the distribution and manufacture, which were felonies, and the judge would have discretion to say it was only 3 pounds, or so we're not going to throw the book at you, or you had 6 bales of marijuana. That's you were not. This is not simple possession. This is not simple manufacture, simple distribution.
Okay, I'll just reiterate. This bill does not alter any of the body of law that are dealing in the quantities and evidence that you're contemplating. This bill is targeted very specifically to simple possession of small amounts.
Yeah.
And I may not be able to persuade you because we don't have a legal library here, but any of the current laws over and above those small simple possession amounts and then this intent to distribute, you've got to have additional evidence if you're going to get up to that 3 years misdemeanor world, is unaltered by this bill. We are not altering that in this bill.
Okay. Well, with all due respect, I mean, the bill seems pretty clear, unless I'm not getting feedback from the judicial proceeding side, but it was previously a felony, and we've taken it down to a misdemeanor.
Let's hear from the Vice Chair of Judicial Proceedings.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think we do have an answer for you. It took us a while to find it, and I apologize for that. So what you're talking about is the gap between 2.5 ounces, which is the civil use amount, and 50 pounds, which is the volume dealer and kingpin amount. So our understanding is that anything between those two amounts remains a 5-year felony. We've lowered to a misdemeanor for possession with intent to distribute at the civil use amount and below to the personal use amount. But from 2.5 ounces up to 50 pounds, that remains a 5-year possession with intent to distribute felony.
All right. I'll study the bill a little bit. Thank you.
All right. Looks like we got there. All right, on the amendments, Chair recognizes the Senator from the 41st District.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the floor leader yield for some questions?
Sure.
Senator may proceed.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you for the work that you've done on this bill. I do think that you put in a lot of good work with good intent. I do have a few questions for you. In a lot of, some of them you've kind of gone over a little bit, but in the work group that we had, and many of the charts we looked at for other states, when it came to home grow and personal use, I remember we discussed, you know, a larger amount, maybe the ability for someone to home grow like 4 to 6 plants, and then if it were like a household, they could do like as many as maybe 12. That was discussed. But in this bill, the decision to reduce it down to just 2 plants per household, how was that derived at?
Candidly, we're working with another chamber, as was mentioned, and we received that particular piece of legislation, and we're trying to not deviate too much if we want to get a bill passed, which I think we should do. And I think the committee, I'll reiterate the point, this isn't really about the House, this is about the Senate Finance Committee. The appetite to keep things low was there. There were, you know, concerns sort of along the lines the senator mentioned from St. Mary's, and so collectively we arrived at that lower amount consistent with where the House was. And so I can't give you, obviously you're right, there's discussions, you can go higher, there's no magic number, but we want to start modest. I will only say that later, if we go full-blown to adult use with market and all the rest, those are the kinds of issues that can be revisited and likely would be revisited.
Thank you. Also, in reading the bill, and as you know, and many people have noticed in this body, it's been difficult to read it because even though we've discussed it at length, the actual bill didn't come out fully until recently, and so I could actually be wrong, but in my desire to read it in time for the session, it looks like so I get it that there's two different studies in the bill. There's a disparity study. There's another study that's more aligned with health issues and the like. There's also a part of the bill that would, according to my reading, authorize citations for passengers in vehicles that may be smoking, correct?
We did put a provision to make it a citation to be smoking cannabis when you're in the car, yes.
So-
As similar to, yeah, when driving on the highway.
So right, it's for the passenger, but, so the reason I'm asking the question is because I'm leaning toward believing that perhaps that would be better placed in the part of the bill that where we are studying different things. I know that there were discussions of studies when we had the work group and other times where there's been studies that say that in the car, unless it's extreme circumstances, a person would not actually, there wouldn't be contact to the driver because the passenger is smoking. And then I also feel like, I'm not sure if it's just only like smoking, does it include smoking, vaping, or any other way that you could ingest it?
I believe the language is smoking or smoking, it's smoking, yeah, just smoking.
So my thought is, well, you're studying the effects of it on other people, people under 18, people over 18, people that are pregnant, so many other issues. Why would we not do the same thing for that? And the reason I asked the question is a huge part of this for me and some other people is upon legalization, it's about removing the pretext often used to stop people, particularly black and brown people, in cars because of marijuana. And so we're not talking about the driver here, we're talking about a passenger smoking, and I'm not sure if it's front seat or back seat. So my thought is, I'm not sure many officers will even be able to tell what a person might be smoking. It could be a cigarette, it could be a joint, it could be a vape that has herbs in it that's not marijuana. I feel like that provision might entice the very profiling stopping that we are hoping to eliminate at some point. So I'm just asking, would you potentially be amenable to taking away that citation because it will give a reason to stop and just put it in the part of the bill that we're studying? Is it in fact true that someone that could be smoking in a car would actually produce a contact high for the driver and cause the driver to be intoxicated? I think it's not, but at least we should study it, I think, rather than...
Well, again, two things. I think the best way to take care of racial profiling is to pass this bill, which will eliminate mass incarceration of those folks who are in simple possession, nonviolent criminal. I mean, let's start with that. But the health analysis advisory council, which is funded, I think is completely able to take a look at a lot of those things. We will be back, just to be clear, maybe I should have made this point earlier, Mr. President, since the full-blown sort of legalization of these small possession amounts is not kicking in fully until July of 2023, we will have an opportunity next session after some of these baseline studies come back for those who are here to make some modifications to even what we have on the floor today. So I think this is the first step. I think we're going to, it's, nothing in any of these bills are going to be perfect, and the more we learn, for example, I believe there may be an amendment dealing with just impairment and investing in some technology to see where the testing on cannabis in the car. I mean, those kinds of things will be hugely helpful to have more technology in that space. So I hear you, and you've been a great advocate on a lot of these issues, and I appreciate that. There are any number of issues we could have handled a little bit differently, but this is how we came down in the committee, and but it's subject to adjustments, I think, particularly next session when we get a lot of these various studies and baseline studies and healthcare studies, and I think what you described should be part of the mix.
Thank you. I won't be too much longer, but I just have a couple more questions. And this is probably the one that gives me the most difficulty, and it's actually, I'm fairly certain that my perspective is philosophically diametrically opposed to my colleagues who talked about this issue of possession with intent to distribute. But this is the aspect of the bill that causes me heartburn. because of the fact that there's data that shows that since 2016, when we decriminalized under the 10 grams and under, possession with intent to distribute shot up. More people were charged with possession with intent to distribute to get around this idea that they couldn't be charged with possession for small amounts. And the number of people that were charged and ultimately convicted and sentenced in the state of Maryland, 92% of those are black people. And I feel extremely strongly that we cannot allow legal, as one of my colleagues said, kingpins to make exorbitant amounts of money and still have any aspect of this that would criminalize possession with intent to distribute. If it is legal and someone is unlicensed, I would think that would be still civil, regulatory, and that the better response would be hit them in the pocket. They're making profits outside of the realm of what we said is okay. So don't criminalize them. Not put them, give them a civil, make it civil, make it a civil fine, make it community service. Maybe even in some instances, educate them and create a pathway where they can figure out how to participate in the licensing structure so they can do it legally. According to this bill, we're deciding we're not going to go with the licensing scheme at this point, so they don't even have that option right now. Like, they can't even sign up to get a license, but they could still be criminalized for the possession with intent to distribute. And so I guess the answer is clear that, and I know some people in this body think they still should be criminalized for it. I just have a lot of problem with that. I think it's the wrong way to move forward. I feel like equally as important, if not more important, in legalizing adult use marijuana for Maryland as a policy is that we would make sure that we repair damage and stop the harm caused to these impacted communities, black and brown communities the most. And so I would suggest that we should not move forward with possession with intent to distribute being a criminal offense, that we should keep it civil, fine it, make it where someone has to contribute to society or fix the problem or even take a different path. But to continue to lock people up, I think is wrong, especially when, again, we're creating legal kingpins that are going to make exorbitant amounts of money for the same thing.
I don't know if that was a question. The only thing I would add is simply that I appreciate the fact that you had legislation that had the repair reinvestment fund, and Senator from the 40th championed it in the committee, that specifically deals with an opportunity to invest back into impacted communities. That's an important part of this bill. I think it was an important part of the legislation you had. I don't think there was a question in all that, Mr. President, so I'll just appreciate the commentary.
Do you not agree that it's hypocritical to say that this is legal, but then still create the mechanism where you're continuing to criminalize the exact same people that have been overly criminalized for decades under prohibition? I guess that's the question.
I sort of agree, to a point.
Thank you. And last thing, one last thing, quick. So
yes.
Also, I know that we discussed, and I know, there aren't that many people in this body that are, that concerned about the criminal laws and, where we are with that. But another thing that we discussed in the past was that a huge problem with marijuana prohibition has been not just that people are charged with possession or possession with intent to distribute, is that it's used as that pretext to get them for other things. And as we move toward legalization, we discussed the idea of odor searches and the fact that the courts have ruled in certain ways, in some instances, the smell of marijuana can't be used as a justification to search. In others, it can. I see we don't address it in the bill except to say that we want the Attorney General to study it. I would posit that we ought to be able to come up with our policy as to what we want to happen, and perhaps it could be a part of another study, but I think it's not it's really about, you know, the judiciary and relying on what the courts have said to some extent. And the courts are trending in a direction where they're saying, we don't want, especially if it's legal, we don't want odor to be a reason that someone is accosted, searched.
Right,
detained.
and so I'm glad you brought that up, Matt. I don't want to belabor. This is a significant issue. If a police officer smells cannabis on a person, we have an evolving body of case law in our Court of Appeals, and so the case law is very clear that if you just smell an odor, that is insufficient to stop somebody on the street. In Maryland, you cannot do it. What the courts then said in 2021, because again, you're right, this is evolving. And the reason we're silent, we're relying in bit on the evolving case law as opposed to codifying case law. What the court said that if you're in the car, your rights of privacy aren't quite the same because you can, you may have contraband. Don't forget, we still have federal laws make some of this illegal. There's a whole range of issues that make it a little more complicated when we're talking about in the car. So there, the court has said that yes, for now, and maybe if the legislature weighs in, they may have a different view on legalization, but they have said that yes, you can search the compartment of the car. You can't search the person. And the reason we stayed away from where I think you're going with this is to say that odor cannot be probable cause for to craft an amendment that really addresses this is challenging. And I think there was some amendment language and that was hard. For example, and I'll leave it with this. There was some amendment language that could be construed that if you did search the car based on just odor, and you found a dead body in the trunk or in the back seat, the police officer could know nothing about it because the search later was deemed to be impermissible. So crafting the perfect legislative provision to address the issue of probable cause and odor was highly, highly problematic. In the meantime, we have an evolving body of case law going through 2021. And I think the court has signaled that they're waiting for the legislature to act, and I think in the near term they may address it themselves. So that's why we stayed away, Mr. President, from touching that, codifying the evolving case law. So it's an important issue, though. I concede that.
Thank you.
All right, on the amendments, Chair recognizes the Minority Whip on the amendments.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wonder if the floor leader, who I've enjoyed working with on the committee, would yield for a couple questions.
Yes. Are these questions not posited in the Finance Committee? I'll just ask.
We'll see. Sometimes it's important for the body to hear questions that go in the committee, but I don't know that this necessarily all came up. So first question would be, this bill has in the language that it's contingent on passage of a referendum, correct?
Correct.
But that is not necessary for us to free Marylanders from the shackles of marijuana prohibition, correct? We could just pass this bill.
You know, I think that same question was asked by your seatmate this morning, and I don't know if you remember my answer at that time to him is, no, we have had straight-up legalization bills in the last session or two, and they didn't go far. On the other hand, we have to take into account the position of the other chamber, and so the issue of a referendum has come up and letting the folks in our state weigh in. And so, yes, I mean, it's not necessary, but that's what we have in front of us.
As we look at a lot of these issues relating to marijuana, both the criminal side, which we've spent a good bit of time talking about today, and also the societal side, are we concerned that there are issues that are going to come up related to greater usage? Because a major concern that I've always had about legalizing marijuana, I'm not somebody who thinks it's the worst thing in the entire world, out of a lot of the other terrible things that we sometimes end up doing in this General Assembly. But I am concerned that by us legalizing it, we say it's okay to, we basically send the signal it's okay for people to utilize it. Can you talk about what is the safeguard in here to make sure there's a robust public health aspect of this?
Well, you know, I would say that that's exactly why we created in this bill the title I think speaks for it, the Cannabis Public Health Advisory Council. And if you look at the provisions of the bill, the task of that advisory council is, among other things, to take a look at impacts on use. So there's two things. We have a baseline study that's going to take place this year to analyze, for example, the use of cannabis for folks under 18, under 21, rate arrests for that category. We're going to have a baseline of data. And then subsequently, we've created this Public Health Advisory Council that will, on an annual basis, continue to monitor some of the issues you just described. So yes, it very much, as you recall from the Finance Committee discussion, came up. I think we're attempting to address it in this bill, and it's a very legitimate issue.
Thank you for that answer. As we talk about, I know there's a fund in the bill to try to reinvest in communities that have been disproportionately harmed by marijuana being illegal, which
Yes.
is an interesting way to talk about it because it was illegal. But I understand the point that many of the proponents of that have, and that they want to see investment going back in. Does this bill provide for any additional investment in making sure that we enforce illicit usage as it relates to driving under the influence, as it relates to those kind of factors? Because one of the concerns that I've always had about this issue is that in places like Colorado that legalized it, there's a lot about it they've had some positive economic benefit, but they've also had a lot of higher rates of car accidents and driving under the influence of marijuana and fighting youth usage. And so, I mean, is there anything in there about better enforcement?
Yeah, well, in fact, my seatmate from the 17th, I think, and I think she's worked with Senator from 42. I think they have a friendly amendment that actually will take a look at using some of the funds in one of these funds to maybe look at the evolving technology on the issue of impairment. And so I look forward to seeing the language. But beyond that, I'll just reiterate, I think that's part of the task of the Health Advisory Council, is to monitor exactly impairment issues, starting with your baseline, and then periodic reviews about what's happening in our state relative to other states, but we can only look at Maryland. So I think that is built into the, and maybe even some more robust protections with a couple of friendly amendments.
So there'll be help for there's help for law enforcement in this bill to be sure that they're able to enforce what's going to be an increase in driving under the influence.
Yeah, I mean, the best answer, ultimately, we need some technological advancing on testing, roadside testing that we don't currently have in practice, but my understanding is that technology is advancing quickly, but that is a gap. I'm not going to say that is as perfect as a sobriety test or an alcohol blood level test that we have for alcohol, but that is one of the challenges that not just Maryland, but the 18 other states. And by the way, it's a problem with we do have, I said this morning, I got to reiterate, we have 150,000 Marylanders currently legally using cannabis in our state. And so this is not a new issue. It came up when we debated medical cannabis. I had no surprise it would come up now, but that's kind of where we are as a state.
And finally, and thank you, Mr. President, finally, as it relates to medical cannabis, I'm glad you brought that up, this bill is pretty silent on the overall regulatory scheme that we're going to use, correct? I mean, that's fair to say.
Yes, I mean, I think what we did try to do is to say, let's do some things now to make it more palatable or less issues involved when we revisit the whole marketing licensing structures. For example, there's uncodified language that will talk about who will regulate a future potential medical and legal market. And so we would house that and merge it into one entity, the Alcohol Tobacco Commission. There are disparity studies. One of the most important principles here, if we have a market structure, we want diversity, we want inclusion, but to make that work constitutionally, you need a diversity study, as we had a long conversation in the Finance Committee. So we will have that study done. In fact, we had an amendment from the senator from District 40 that actually said that until we have that diversity study, the issue of applications, nothing will happen. We want to have that on the books behind us so that when we talk about social equity applicants and all the rest, which will be an important part of any future discussion, we want to have the legal foundation, which is under the United States Supreme Court, we need to have. So that's all in there. That's all in this bill.
I thought that was great discussion in the committee about that because, yeah, if you're going to say we're waiting on a disparity study, let's be sure we don't want to have a process where we issue licenses and then we have to go back and frankly fight it out like we've seen with medical marijuana. Let me say this though, is because just in closing of my final question, is it the commitment of our body, and if we pass this, that we are not going to treat medical the same way as we treat recreational, that we're going to make sure the tax structure is separate, that there is, because there is a legitimate medical use for cannabis. I've always supported it ever since I got into the legislature, and there are a lot of businesses that are thriving in our state, growing, dispensing. So is it our commitment that we're not going to cause that to starve and have everybody just be using recreational because, hey, I'd rather do that than go through the rigmarole of what I really need?
Well, first of all, as you probably know from the bills, medical product is currently not taxed in Maryland. We don't tax medical cannabis.
Right.
We presumably will tax the adult use market and reinvest that to a lot of state priorities. Those are decisions about how we do all that and the mix of the current medical licensees. That's for a future conversation. I don't think that's going to be resolved here on the floor today.
Okay.
We made a decision to lay a foundation, but tackle those issues, maybe in the next session, or we shall see.
Okay, thank you for your answers, Mr. President. I raised a few of those issues partly to say I think it needs to be on the record that if we move forward and we pass this, we need to be careful we need to be careful that we don't have everybody that wants to use cannabis for a need that they have begin self-medicating and going to all recreational. We need to be sure the tax structure makes sense. We need to be sure that we have the right kind of enforcement for what will be an increase in driving under the influence. No question, it will be an increase of it, and there's going to be a lot of societal things that come from saying it's legal. I know a lot of people smoke it illegally now, and that's the argument for legalizing it and taxing it. But I think this is a lot of unsettled stuff we're doing in this bill. And so I wanted to raise those issues on the record because I think this bill will create more problems that we will have to solve. And the last thing I'll say is I'm actually, even though I don't want to legalize, I don't want to have somebody with 30 pounds of marijuana running around without consequence, there is an interesting point of view here that once you legalize something, it becomes a lot harder to say, well, you can't have that much of it because the government wants its take. So I just think there's a lot of issues here, and I think we should have, this bill to me does not resolve a number of questions. I know people say we're going to come back, but I just think there's a lot of questions and issues here. I do appreciate the work of the vice chair and answering my questions, and we have worked on this issue a lot in the committee together. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. All right, Chair recognizes Senator from Montgomery County.
Thank you, Mr. President. The foreshadowing on the amendment, and this is the amendment. If Ms. Morris.
We still have to adopt the committee amendments.
Okay, let's do that.
Are we ready for the committee amendments?
Sure. Move the adoption of the committee report.
All right. Question on the amendments. We have another member of the Finance Committee who had ample opportunity to have a conversation about this in the Finance Committee. Has a question on the amendments that were put on in the Finance Committee.
Yeah, I think it is important that at one time we talk a little bit more specifically on the amendments. Again, earlier today we heard that we are working with the House again on this bill, and that couldn't be more of an understatement. We have taken, again, the House's entire bill and put it onto our bill. The first 77 pages of this bill have been stricken. And to my colleague's credit, the Vice Chairman's credit, whether you support legalization or not, he had a very, very good, well thought out public policy piece of legislation before us. Very similar to what we had last year as well, too. We had it again this year. Many of you were all on a cannabis work group. Think about 12 of us. We had 4 different subgroups, 3 different people each. I remember a number of us were at the NCSL meeting in Tampa, and we were all on that phone call because that's how important it was for us to try to at least come up with good policy. And Mr. President, once again, we're not doing that. We're kicking the can down the road again for the second year in a row and not putting together any meaningful policy legislation regarding this issue. We're going to see another bill come up in a little bit about a constitutional amendment, a referendum question designed to completely deceive the voters, to let them think that we're in here doing something when in fact we're not. We're not doing policy once again. So what doesn't this bill do again that we've talked about? There's no market structure here. There's nothing to do with licensing. We hardly address health concerns. We don't touch taxation. And there's no economic impact at all, which was all things that we talked about in our group. Once again, we're taking the House's bill that cuts that all aside, and what we have before us now is a criminal justice bill, plain and simple. That's all we have, is a bill that is going to legalize or decriminalize marijuana. It's not going to go anything out about doing some of the things that we all worked upon. This bill has 3 different funds to it. A business assistance fund that's designed to assist minority businesses enter the adult use cannabis industry that we haven't created yet. We've got a public health fund that addresses the health effects from legalization. So in other words, we know that this is bad for everybody, but we're going to set up a fund and we're going to address those concerns. And of course, you've heard about the community reinvestment funds. That's the reparations for the war on drugs. That's going to go to communities that were impacted by the enforcement when marijuana was illegal. What was the Senate's input on all of this? Well, we did. We talked about the 280E, which is an important tax deduction for businesses in both the medical and adult use industry when that comes about. We talked about some regulations on motor vehicles. That was our input on this. So, you know, again, it is getting to where it is frustrating on the amount of work that we continue to put into these policy initiatives, the amount of work that comes forward out of this body, and once again, we're choosing not to accept our work, but to accept the work from across the hall. And Mr. President, that's why I'm not voting for these amendments. I didn't vote to concur with anything that we're looking to do with them, even though it's not a concurrence. It's basically the acceptance of that. And I think that we all should do the same, not vote for this, and let's come back with more meaningful policy. Thank you.
All right, on the amendments, very briefly.
Very briefly,
On
and
the
thank you
amendments,
for
the
that,
amendments.
Mr. President. On the amendments, I just want to say, colleagues, we will be taking up all of the issues that we just heard when we come back next session. That's when we will be addressing the public safety, the public health, the testing pieces of how we're going to manage traffic stops, how we are going to ensure that public health and welfare and safety are in a key piece of what it is we do, including the structure that the Vice Chair of the Finance Committee has worked exceedingly hard to develop. It's not gone. It will be addressed next year on the assumption that the voters choose to pass the referendum that will be before them in November. So the bottom line here is we're not putting the cart before the horse. If the voters say, let's go down this path, then all the hard work that the Vice Chair has been working on and the Finance Committee and those who are committed to ensuring we get it right, that's when it will be addressed. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, on the 4 committee amendments, any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye, opposed nay. The ayes have it. The 4 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, on the report, Chair recognizes the Senator from Baltimore City on the report.
Mr. Chair, I have an amendment.
Not quite. After we do the report.
Okay.
Are we have any discussion on the report? If not, all in favor of the report say aye, opposed nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. We have some amendments, I believe. Senator from Baltimore City has an amendment. Well, we have Montgomery County too. Let's do we know we had one from the Vice Chair of E, then we'll go to the Senator from Baltimore City.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think this one is brief.
Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. A number of colleagues have already spoken about the concern related to increased traffic deaths due to impairment after we legalize. The data is already there that the deaths have increased just based on medical cannabis. And so in partnership with the good senator from District 42, I'm proposing an amendment that I hope is friendly that would just allow one of the uses of one of the funds to be some of this new technology to allow us to measure impairment levels among drivers. Move the amendment.
All right, Senator moves the amendment from the Vice Chair.
I think it's a good amendment, friendly.
Friendly amendment. All right, Chair recognizes Senator from Baltimore City.
I'm sorry, Mr. President. I don't have the amendment. Does it direct from which fund it's attracting? Where's the amendment?
Oh, go on. Go on. Is it the health fund? It's the health fund. Yeah. It's from the Health Advisory Council Fund.
Okay.
Public Health Advisory Fund.
Thank you.
All right.
Mr. President.
On the amendment, Chair recognizes Senator from
Just a
District
quick
7.
question, if the amendment sponsor would
Maker of the
yield.
amendment will yield.
Me too.
Senator may
Thank you. The
proceed.
studies you mentioned, did any of them talk about whether the impairment was from the driver or from a passenger smoking in a vehicle?
Well, I can tell you, Zero Deaths Maryland reported that in the last 5 years, almost 800 deaths have been due to impaired drivers, and that totals about a third of all traffic fatalities in our state. The numbers go up, and that has proven to be the case in Colorado and elsewhere. We have data from a lot of places.
But I guess my question is about, is it the driver smoking it, or is it a passenger smoking it in the vehicle and the driver inhaling the secondhand
This
smoke?
is only about drivers.
Okay.
All right. On the amendment, any further discussion? Chair recognizes Senator from District 11.
Thank you very much. I have a question for the maker of the amendment.
Question for the maker of the amendment. Senator may proceed.
Thank you very much. Can you tell me a little bit about how many companies there are out there that produce this kind of technology? And just can you elaborate a little bit on what it is, please?
Sure. So I have worked on this issue a number of years, again, in partnership the last few years with the good senator from District 42. There are, frankly, an increasing number of companies because the technology is out there and because the demand is out there, and that is because the problem exists. So I have brought in examples and test kits and stuff for the Judicial Proceedings Committee over the years. So this isn't sole source. If the concern is whether this is a red-headed Eskimo to support one company, it is not. So if that's the meta question, no. There are multiple companies.
There's competition in the industry.
There is totally competition.
And this could be available to any number of companies.
Of companies that are doing reliable work that has credibility and
Thank you.
accuracy.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
All right. On the amendment, was deemed a friendly amendment by the committee. Chair recognizes Senator from the 23rd on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. May I ask the maker of the amendment a question?
Sure.
Thank you very much. I appreciate this. You said something that kind of struck out. This is specific to drivers, correct?
Correct.
But wouldn't this equally be applicable to those who operate heavy machinery, doctors, those people who carry firearms?
So this is on this bill, which is a cannabis bill, and this would allow these tests to be purchased, especially from some of our lower income counties that want to choose to provide this extra tool in the toolkit
But
for
only
their
for
police
drivers.
officers. For drivers is who officers would be pulling over.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. On the amendment, any further discussion? Chair recognizes Senator from the 28th District on the amendment.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Question for the maker of the amendment.
Senator may proceed.
Okay. Thank you for this amendment, Senator. My question is, this technology, does it include any medically intrusive procedures that will be performed on the side of the road by law enforcement?
That is such a good question. Thank you, Senator. So again, we're not on the committee that deals with this, but over the years we've had a number of hearings. So these are oral swabs, and in the same way we have all gotten too used to having nasal swabs for COVID. This is, think about like a Q-tip rubbing the inside of your cheek. And then in a similar way that we do with COVID tests, then it sort of goes into a little device, and in just a few minutes, the results become available.
So thank you for that.
And currently, sorry, just to be clear, so currently, in order to get this level of accuracy, you have to be arrested, go down to a station, have a needle put in your arm, have blood drawn, wait for the results, and in the meantime, you have your driver's license taken away. So this is much less invasive, and it is why a lot of states and a lot of countries are using this technology.
So you're saying that current law allows the needling and drawing
Correct.
of blood, but this technology will
This is just
exclusive-
allowing counties, it's just one extra use of the fund, of the public health fund related to cannabis.
Yeah.
And it may be that no counties choose to use it, but it just adds an option, like
Yeah,
another
is-
tool in the toolkit.
Okay, thank you for this tool. So is it possible to interpret this amendment, technology proven, it's not kind of prescriptive, could it be interpreted by anyone saying that it could be a blood draw on the side of the road and a new technology?
So because that happens now, I think this is clear. This is technology. This isn't a blood test. Blood test is being used now. This is new technology, and it's not super expensive, but we still want to make it available to counties who might choose to use it. So I think it's just authorizing if that, and it just another option, again, for the use of this public health fund.
So just in listening to this and reading the amendment, it seemed like anyone could be interpretive as far as what this technology could be, because it's not really prescriptive, it's just a
Correct.
technology.
Correct.
So if someone a new company come up with a technology that requires a different type of test, this amendment, do you think will allow that?
Might need some help on that. So I suspect that chiefs of police, county leaders, the attorney general, I suspect that there will be other decision makers. This just authorized another option.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but that option could be anything that comes along that's new technology.
No, it would still have to be proven to be accurate and to be approved by folks. You can't just randomly make something up. But this would be much less invasive, much quicker, and frankly, much less expensive.
Okay, but it seems like you are thinking of a specific technology when this amendment does not address that specific technology. It's just broad. It seems like you could drive a school bus through this.
Well, just like the senator from District 11 asked whether it was, sort of unique for one company. It's not. There are several companies, but and there may be more that get in the field, but it is not any technology that would be allowed for this. And presumably, the fund is going to be overseen by some smart folks who are going to say, yes, this is allowed, and this other option is not allowed.
Okay. So I thought we were the smartest people around, so we should tell them what. So, okay. Well,
Thank you, Senator.
Senator.
All right, I think we understand the issues. On the amendment, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. All right, Chair recognizes the senator from Baltimore City.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rise for amendment.
All right, give us one moment to load it up. Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Inside of the bill, it talks about 3 funds. One of the funds deals with small minority business owners. When you talk about it, it talks about shall prioritizing populations that's adversely been affected in reference to the subject matter, but underneath of it, it says may in reference to those that have been incarcerated. I think that Maryland wants to continue to lead like other states are leading in reference to this issue, making sure that folks that have been adversely affected are sitting at the table. What this does is it just puts the shall instead of a may.
All right, let's hear from the floor leader.
Yes, that one word change is friendly amendment. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, any further discussion on the amendment? Any objections? The chair recognizes the senator from the 41st.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have an amendment.
Oh, but hold up, we've got to make sure that we adopt this one first. All right, on the amendment, it was deemed friendly. All in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Senator has an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sorry about the premature offer. So I haven't had my amendment adopted as a friendly amendment. However, I would posit that it should be. Based on the questions that I asked before, this amendment would do 2 things essentially. It's 503526. And on the issue of PWID, of possession with intent to
Senator, just give us 1 second. Something, it's not quite coming up. 1 second. All right, there it goes.
Thank you so much. So on the issue of possession with intent to distribute, it would require that possession with intent to distribute offenses would be civil. I brought up the issue of why I think this is important, but I'll just reiterate the astronomical number of arrests that happen in Maryland, even though it's been well-known data for a very long time that black people and white people use marijuana at the same rate, that 92% of those arrested and ultimately convicted are black. And I'm very concerned with some of the other things in the bill that we're still going to criminalize marijuana for those same people while we're now allowing ultimately wealthy people to be able to distribute absolutely any amount they want to for not only no criminalization, but for major, major profits. I think it's patently unfair, and I would ask that we would adopt this amendment for those reasons. And also, the issue I brought up about the passenger in the car, because I strongly feel and fear that that would be used as a pretext to pull people over unnecessarily, I would ask that the amendment says that that would be stricken from the bill, but as I brought up to the floor leader, at the very least, I think that issue ought to be included in the study to determine whether or not what's the likelihood or percentage of people or instances that actually result in impaired driver, keeping in mind we already have laws on the books that deal with the driver that is impaired. So if the driver is impaired, that's already going to be dealt with. I'm not sure why we're taking this extra leap to deal with the passenger in this bill. So for those reasons, I would offer this and posit that it ought to be friendly. Thank you.
All right, Senator moves the amendment. Let's hear from the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, first of all, and you know I'm a big fan. I just wish you would have shown us the amendment before you offered it. Didn't have that. But that aside, as I understand, you know, what you're proposing, and maybe this goes back to some of the discussion we had with the gentleman in the corner about this gap between 2.5 ounces and 50 pounds. As I read your amendment, it would pretty much make that entire, that whole thing essentially a civil citation. I don't think the committee, at least certainly I don't think the Finance Committee was prepared, or I don't know if the body's prepared to do that. I think that is a bill for a different time. I think that's a standalone bill, lengthy discussion, hearings and all the rest. I don't think it fits within this bill at this time. And so for those reasons, Mr. President, I'd urge the body to resist the amendment. Thank you.
All right, on the amendment, any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendment, say aye. Opposed, nay. Noes have it. The amendment is rejected. Do we have any further amendments to the bill or its title? Chair recognizes the senator from the 34th District. The senator has an amendment. Senator may explain the amendment.
Yeah, Mr. President, this is an amendment further to the discussions we had earlier today, and it simply, again, it deals with the fund. It's somewhat related to the amendment that was previously adopted. This just says that the fund can be used for training and equipment, and not just simply training. It doesn't restrict the equipment to specifically as the amendment, previous amendment does, but it would allow the fund to be used not just for training the drug recognition experts, but also for equipping those folks to facilitate. I mean, the idea here is that we don't want people being pulled off unnecessarily. We want to expedite this. If you're not at a certain level in your car, let's get you back on the road. Let's not do an arrest here, and that's the idea. Thank you.
Senator moves the amendment. Chair recognizes the floor leader.
Amendment's probably a little bit redundant to the amendment we just adopted, but having said that, erring on the side of accommodating the point here, that's a friendly amendment. That'll
All
be fine.
right, on the amendment, any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye, opposed nay. The ayes have it, the amendment is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 833 is hereby ordered printed for third reader. While we're on it, let's go to layover calendar number 56. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 837, Delegate Clippinger, Cannabis Reform. Questions on the adoption of the committee amendments and the favorable report.
All right, question is on the adoption of the 3 committee amendments. All in favor of the amendment say aye, opposed nay. The ayes have it, the 3 committee amendments are adopted. Now on the amended report, any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye, opposed nay. The ayes have it, the favorable committee report as amended is adopted. We suspect we have some amendments. Chair recognizes the senator from Montgomery County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, along with my friend from District 42, I've got an amendment that will do the same thing as the previous bill. Move adoption of the amendment.
All right, senator moves the amendment. Presume it is yet again friendly.
Friendly.
All right. All in favor, let's make sure we get it up there. Hold on one second. Just make sure we get it up there. All right, all in favor say aye, opposed nay. The ayes have it, the amendment is adopted. The senator from Baltimore City, if we could collect the senator's amendment. Same amendment that was just adopted.
Yes, it is, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'm going to say exactly what you just said. That is the same amendment that we just got finished taking up that was voted in favor.
Was incorporated. We can assume, are there any objections to the senator's amendment?
All good. Good
Without
amendment.
Without objection, the amendment is adopted. Another amendment from the senator from the 34th district. What did I say? 46? Did I say? At this point, close enough. We're just 12, 13. Yes, Senator may explain the amendment.
Same amendment as to the previous bill, Mr.
Any
President.
objections?
Thank you.
All good.
Without objections, the amendment is adopted. All right. If there are any further amendments to the bill or its title, seeing none, House Bill 837 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. Where are we? Well, let's take them all up right now. We've got a report out of the Committee on Finance. This is report number 33. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 1, Delegate Clippinger, Constitutional Amendment, Cannabis Adult Use in Possession, favorable with one amendment. This is a constitutional amendment.
All right, let's go ahead and hear from the floor leader on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 1 is a proposed constitutional amendment, if approved by the voters in November 2022, authorizes an individual at least age 21 to use and possess cannabis in the state beginning July 1, 2023, subject to the requirement that the General Assembly pass legislation regarding the use, distribution, possession, regulation, and taxation of cannabis. The amendment clarifies the language that will appear in the ballot. I move the amendment and the adoption of the favorable committee report, Mr. President.
All right, floor leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment, the favorable committee report. Chair recognizes the senator from the 6th district on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Layover under the rule.
Senator's motion is in order. The bill and the amendment will lay over under the rule. All right, let's take up our next layover calendar, which is number 55. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 1021, the Speaker, Public Safety, Licensed Firearms Dealers, Security Requirements. Questions on the adoption of the committee amendment offered from the floor by Senator Huff.
All right, question is on the amendment. Chair recognizes the maker of the amendment.
Yeah, just to explain the amendment. This amendment will put the effective date from 2022 to 2023. The reason being that, and quite frankly, this bill came in to us yesterday. It came in so fast that we heard from the opposition side, they didn't have time to come in and testify. So we were getting all the stuff, looking all their opposition and some of their amendments this morning. You notice the bill came through, doesn't have a single amendment on it because we weren't able to get any on there. And there's still some problems with this bill, and my preference would be these are small businesses, give them time to implement and come into compliance with the bill. But also, quite frankly, I think the General Assembly may want to come back and look at this a little bit more. So I'll press my amendment.
All right, Senator moves his amendment. Let's hear from the floor leader on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're sensitive to some of those concerns, and so we'd be amenable to something like January of 2023, but the longer lag time kind of defeats the purpose of just getting these procedures, these laws, and these regulations out and getting this law on the books and making sure that our stores and our communities are more safe in a safe and expeditious manner. So I'd ask the body to resist the amendment.
Resist the amendment. All right, on the amendment, let's hear any senators who have not yet spoken wish to speak. Chair recognizes Senator from the 34th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this is a really, if you look at the way the bill's structured, it has all these requirements for these facilities that are not currently required, and it doesn't define them either. What it says is, it says you have to have bars, screens, certain commercial doors, grates, and other physical barriers, and then it lets the secretary promulgate regulations to define, what do you mean by bars? Is it a bar? I mean, how big are these bars? What do they have to be made of? How durable? What kind of security screens? What's acceptable? What kind of commercial grade doors? What's appropriate? Grading. Again, everything in here is very vague. It's not, they're not defined terms. So this thing is going to require a detailed regulation that's going to have to be developed. It's going to have to be debated. It's going to have to be issued, go into effect. The owners of these facilities are going to have to review those, determine whether or not they comply with them, and then if they don't, to order whatever they have to do, contract to get those items changed and put on. And if they don't have all this stuff done in time, they're subject to having their licenses suspended or revoked. It's just wholly inappropriate to do this thing in this expedited manner. This is unfair. It's grossly unfair. These folks are throughout our state, and while many of them may already be in some level of compliance, they don't know. They don't even know if they're in compliance, so we don't know what these yet to be adopted regulations are going to say. And for those of you who sit on AELR, you know how long that process takes. Development of the regulations. You have to go through the Administrative Procedures Act and all of that and develop these things. So to hold folks, and we're talking about fines, we're talking about denial of licenses, we're talking about suspension of licenses. To do that on an expedited basis is just grossly unfair and might I add, unnecessary. So I'd ask to support the amendment. Thank you.
All right, on the amendment, any senators who have not yet spoken wish to speak? If not, Chair recognizes the maker of the amendment.
Yeah, I'll just say, we do have, not only that, what just said the regulatory issues, you've got labor shortages right now, you've got supply chain issues. I'm not sure how much all the materials, things that are required in this bill are going to be even readily available. So I just ask for a roll call on the amendment. Thank you.
All right, on the amendment, Chair recognizes the minority leader.
Yeah, the floor leader would yield on the amendment.
Senator may proceed.
So just the process, how you can walk me through this. So we pass a bill, the effective date is October. When, I guess the department can't adopt regulations till it becomes law. And then I'm looking in here and it says a licensed dealer may not conduct business if they don't do this. So process-wise, I own a business. I don't know about this law that we're passing down in Annapolis. October 1st comes. Is there any provisions in the bill that say you have 60 days or 90 days? How does that work process-wise?
No, there isn't. So right now, we passed this bill this year. You've got 7 months, so October 1st effective date. In those intervening 7 months, MSP is going to have to promulgate those regs, and everyone's going to have to come into compliance on October 1st.
And I've worked with the Board of Elections on another bill about regulations and so forth, and they said they can't adopt them really quick for like the primaries, and they were saying it's going to be August or September before they could actually promulgate regulations. So assuming that's the same in the other departments, you're talking August, September, they're putting the regulations in place. Now the businesses know what they need to do if they communicate it quickly. Then they have to actually go out and acquire a contractor to do this in a week or two, and if they can't, then the state's going to shut them down based on this law?
So again, 7 months is adequate amount of time to comply with this. Once this bill once it passes, people are going to be put on notice. MSP is going to go to work. And one thing that came up earlier in our discussion with the senator from Carroll County is that a number of these dealers already have a number of these safety measures in place already. It's kind of common practice. So this is just basically creating a baseline for the entire state to make sure that we're all safe. So you got 7 months. Everyone's going to be put on notice. It's adequate amount of time.
So the ones who have it already are going to be good. I'm concerned about the ones who don't. And you said you're sure that they can do this in 7 months. Have you talked to the department and they've given you an estimate of when they can have these regulations promulgated?
I do not have confirmation from them that they can do it, but this is a routine practice. Whenever we pass laws here with October 1 effective dates, the mechanisms of government turn and they get the job done.
Well, in all due respect, like I said, I was talking with the Board of Elections, and they said the wheels don't turn that quick in government. And, we can say adopt regulations for the primary elections and so forth, and they said there's no way we can do that, just the timing. So the fact that the committee doesn't know when, other than just government does this stuff, and this bill would actually put people out of business because of the time frame, what is the urgency if so many people already have this to give them a little extra time to make sure that they can do this and not be put out of business?
Well, I would say that, look, it's not an automatic, hey, you have a suspension or a revocation of your license. There will be a process. So someone's going to have to go there and cite you for being out of compliance with the regulations and with the law. There's going to have to be an appeals process. So if that happens, so it's within the realm of possible, but not probable. And it's not an automatic thing. It's something that someone's going to have to go there and give you a citation and then trigger this appeal process. So it's not something that, as if like on October 1st, you're just automatically going to get your license suspended or revoked.
Okay, so the way I read the bill, though, is they will be out of compliance with law October 1st, and the law says a licensed dealer may not conduct business unless they do this. So come October 1st, if they don't have this implemented, contracted, and all that, you're saying they'll be out of compliance with law, but they'll be okay because they're going to have to wait for government to slowly get out to them and give them a citation and appeal it?
So that's the way that this would play out. I mean, but you would be out of compliance on October 1st if you didn't do it.
All right, on the amendment, any further? Chair recognizes the senator from the 36th district on the amendment.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. The floor leader would continue to yield.
Senator may proceed.
Again, just to clarify again, the bill goes into effect October 1st? Or the bill goes into effect once the governor signs it? Or
October 1st.
October 1st. And then from that point, the regulations have to be drawn up and adopted?
So the regulations, once we pass this bill, MSP is going to have to go to work on developing those regulations and starting that process. But
once we pass it, doesn't mean anything.
But your point is correct.
Right.
So technically, the effective date is when those regs need to start being promulgated or need to be distributed. So, yes.
And that's the normal process that AELR works on a number of things leading up, or not AELR, but the departments, the agencies work on regulations. It has to go through AELR as well too before October.
Part of the administrative procedure. Yeah, that's exactly right. You've got a notice and comment period. You've got AELR is going to weigh in. You're going to get feedback from industry
before
right.
October 1st.
That's right.
And then from October 1st until January 1st, when are all these gun stores making these changes?
So practically speaking, right now, once we pass this bill, it's not going to be implemented until October 1st, but that's what the notice has gone out. You know that you're going to have to work on these regulations. Industry is going to have to understand what's happening with the law and comply and make sure that they're in compliance by October 1st. So those wheels start to turn as soon as we pass this bill.
All right, and then just who puts out all that regulation, all that notice that you were just speaking
So
about?
MSP will be responsible for promulgating those regulations.
Okay, and just real quick, what problem is this bill trying to solve?
So there were a couple of high-profile incidents in Baltimore County and Montgomery County, a couple other jurisdictions of the state where There were a lot of smash and grabs from FFLs, where a lot of weapons were stolen and vanished into the black market. So this bill seeks to tighten up and ensure that if you are a dealer distributing large amount of firearms, that you are now acting in a way that secures and ensures that those firearms don't make their way into the black market.
Okay, and the penalty being if you don't follow these, you could end up losing that license.
You could have a suspension or a revocation or a fine.
That's right. Okay, thank you.
All right, on the amendment, Chair recognizes the senator from District 6.
Thank you. Just a brief. We do studies, we do work groups, and we do a lot of different things that we give these groups and studies a year. We give them at least the first of the year. We give them opportunity to be prepared to answer anything. And we're kind of limiting this. Couldn't we give that grace period if a person is going to have to do something like this, if a business is going to have to do something like this and put this in place? And they're starting maybe, they're getting there. Couldn't we give a grace period? And that grace period, that is, could be the first of the year, again, like we do studies, like we do work groups. And we give them the year, we give them the whole year to give them opportunity to do it right. This is something that I think we could do also. Don't you think that would be a good thing to show this grace?
We've got 7 months now, and as I mentioned before, it'd be amenable to January 1st, but that would be plenty of time, in my estimation, to comply.
Thank you.
All right. On the amendment, any further discussion? Chair, any senators who have not yet spoken who wish to speak? If not, Chair recognizes the senator from the 34th District.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, can you just, once a regulation is proposed by the secretary, do you know how long it has to be published in the Maryland Register before it can be reviewed? You know what the process, the timeline is?
I don't know the answer to that question, actually. We're checking with counsel. I don't know.
Okay, and do we know how long the Attorney General has to review the regulation before it's published?
We're looking into that right now.
Okay, and then, while we're looking, I'd just like to know how long it takes, how long the community has an opportunity for input before the regulation can be adopted.
Yeah, we'll find out the information right now.
Okay. I just like the amount of time it takes from, the secretary's going to adopt this thing. Obviously, we're going to give him about 3 days to develop these regulations under this law, is what it looks like. But once he develops these complex regulations, I'd just like to know the amount of time it's going to take from secretary's done until it goes through all the rulemaking process until those regulations are actually implemented.
So we've got 45 days after the regs have been published. So 45 days for the notice comment, 15 days, so 45 days after they're published, you've got 15 days for comment, for public comment,
So
notice and
2
comment.
months gone.
Okay. And that's it so far, that's all I got.
Okay. And then, so we had 2 months on, and what about the Attorney General's review? Do we know how long it takes the Attorney General to review before it can be published?
Suspect it depends on the agency, would be my guess. Each agency has their own Attorney General.
Counsel, we were looking into that right now.
I mean, it'd be safe to say we're looking at least 3 months in this process, right?
I mean, just as, it's what happens with every law we pass. Every law we pass.
Sure.
Every
And
law.
then
Including
AELR
October.
gets to review it as well. Well, I mean, but not every law we pass requires regulation. I mean, those are implemented by regulation. I didn't know if somebody in the staff has a general sense of how long it takes to, in most cases, to move a regulation from the Enabling Act is
All right,
published to.
Here's the regulation adoption process. You've got 15 days for the adopting agency to submit the proposed regs to AELR, and then they've got 15 days to adopt and submit their proposal to the Maryland Registrar. Then there's 15 days to have it noticed to have notice and then publication. And then you've got 45 days or 30 days of public comment, okay? And after that happens, there's an adoption process, which is up to 9 days. Then it's published no less than 10 days after that, and at 10 days after it's adopted, it becomes effective.
So we're getting close to almost 6 months, or at least 5 months in all that.
So you're looking at 1 month, 2 months, about 94 days minimum is the quickest. So you're looking at 3 months.
Minimum.
Yeah.
Right, if they're rushed. That's after the secretary
Promulgates the regs.
I mean, after they're drafted.
That's correct.
So probably at least 5 months to generate these things. And now we're going to have a bill that we have no interpretation on any of these terms yet, and that's going to become effective October 1st.
That's correct.
Yeah. And then all of the people will be held to the terms in the bill immediately.
That's correct.
And they could have their license issued, suspended, or revoked for non-compliance.
Potentially.
Yeah. Okay. Seems quite unfair. But thank you.
All right, on the amendment, Senator requests a roll call vote. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 28 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails. Chair recognizes the senator from District 4.
Have another amendment.
Senator has an amendment. We will collect the amendment. Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. If we're going to treat this as a serious crime, people breaking into licensed firearm dealers and stealing their firearms, then maybe instead of just punishing the firearm dealer and going after the firearm dealer and punishing the one side, the person who is, quite frankly, the victim of the crime, the person who had their property broken into, had their items stolen, maybe we should actually punish the person that broke in and stole the items. So that's what this amendment does. A person convicted of theft of a firearm from a licensed dealer is guilty of a felony. Currently, right now, it's a misdemeanor. It's a pretty light punishment. And on conviction is subject to imprisonment of not less than 5 years. It's pretty simple. That's what the amendment does. It takes theft of a firearm from a misdemeanor to a felony if you steal from one of these licensed firearm dealers. If this is the epidemic and the problem's as bad as it is, maybe instead of punishing and putting out of business the law-abiding gun store owner who's the victim of a crime, we should actually punish the criminal. I'd ask for a roll call vote.
All right, let's hear from the floor leader.
We actually dealt with this issue a little bit earlier in the session, and we dealt with it with not only theft but also possession of a stolen firearm. So I thank the senator from Carroll County for that. But look, a 5-year misdemeanor allowing for judicial discretion to understand the facts of each case-specific case, I think is the best way to go. Mandatory minimums clearly leave that discretion at bay, and so I would ask the body to resist the amendment.
All right, on the amendment, Chair recognizes the senator from Carroll County.
Well, I just rise in support of this really excellent amendment modeled on legislation that we worked on together in a bipartisan fashion. Unfortunately, it hasn't had a vote in the House of Delegates yet, so I think it'd be great to be sure that we get this back over to them so they can help them out, be able to vote on this issue with a concurrence with this bill. So I think it's an excellent idea. We're talking about setting in place some pretty punitive things if a store owner doesn't comply, not give them a whole lot of time to comply. Least we can do is make sure if you break into a licensed firearm dealer and steal firearms, I think you should have a very serious penalty for that. We want to crack down on gun violence, so I think it's a great amendment, and I encourage the body to support it.
All right, from the floor leader.
I'll just be really brief. I mean, you know, our theft statutes, misdemeanor felonies based on the amount. So if you're going through smash and grab in a dealer, you're going to have something over 1,500. 1,500 is already a felony, so it's really superfluous and unnecessary if you're talking about one of these cases.
All right, on the amendment, Senator's requested a roll call vote. Chair
Let's
recognizes
try
the
real
maker of
quick.
the amendment.
It's not superfluous because this is a 5-year mandatory minimum that can't be suspended. So it is a tougher sentence. And if we're going to go after the gun stores and punish them, why not punish people breaking into them?
All right, on the amendment, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 27 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails.
Mr. President.
Yes, just to be very clear, tonight we're going to get through our work tonight. So I know there are things planned. We got a lot of work, but we're going to stay here until we get it done. So, yep. Didn't
There
work
we go.
there. Won't work here. Chair recognizes the minority whip has an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, it's interesting. That's, committee process is very important. Sometimes it's important to have discussions even out on the floor, too. This is an amendment. Just simply, sometimes it's known as sort of a preemption amendment. But what my amendment would do would just make sure that it's clear that this new statewide law supersedes any local law, ordinance, or regulation that relates to security requirements for the premises of licensed firearm dealers and storage of firearms during non-business hours. I do want to apologize that I wasn't able to share this with the committee chair. That was not my intention to keep him in the dark. This, I think, is pretty straightforward amendment, just to make sure we're not having a confusing matrix of regulations. In a lot of cases, this bill may make the law more stringent, but we want to be sure that there's no confusion for our firearm dealers and small businesses that are engaging in this practice. So I would move my amendment, Mr. President, and ask for a roll call vote.
Senator moves the amendment. Chair recognizes the chair of the committee.
Thanks. Thank you to the senator from Carroll County. You've always been courteous with extending the amendments beforehand, so I appreciate that. Look, obviously, every law we pass here establishes a floor, not the ceiling. If a certain jurisdiction feels as though there is a more pervasive threat, then they can go ahead and develop more stringent requirements, and so I'd ask the body to resist the amendment.
On the amendment, any further discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 30 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails. Chair recognizes the senator from the 4th District.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Are we ready?
Not quite yet. One moment. Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you. This is an amendment we discussed in committee. I would have liked to offer an amendment in this amendment committee, but we were unable to. So essentially one of the problems with this bill is it says if you're if you're an FFL, a licensed firearm dealer, it treats you all the same. It treats the Walmarts the same, the gun stores the same, and it also treats the people that basically sell 2 or 3 guns a year the same. So if somebody's selling one out of their home, they get treated exactly the same with all these requirements in the bill. That doesn't make sense. This is just a common sense amendment that says retail location does not include a licensed dealer who has a non-retail location which is not open to the general public. So a lot of times you get these people, they're custom gunsmiths. Quite frankly, in the ghost gun bill that we just passed, we recognize that some of these FFLs are different than others. And for example, these are the people a lot of times are the gunsmiths. They'd only do 2 or 3 guns a year. So the fact that they're thrown in this bill with the Walmarts and the Dick's Sporting Goods, that's just not good policy. So I would ask that we adopt this amendment.
All right, on the amendment, Chair recognizes the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. The bill actually already addresses this circumstance, and it's on page 3, the bottom of line, page 3, lines 29 through 30, and then on top of page 4, which essentially means that if you're not one of these FFLs with a storefront location, you're doing something out of your home, you just have to have your firearm stored in a safe, a vault, or a vault, and that's it. So it's already kind of pondered into the bill.
All right, on the amendment, any further discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 30 votes in the negative, Senator's amendment fails. Are there any further amendments?
Another
Chair
amendment.
recognizes Senator from District 4. Senator may explain the amendment.
So the way that currently a lot of stores, a lot of the bigger stores, that they currently would satisfy, in my mind, securing their firearms, is through having a shatterproof or fortified display case, a glass display case equipped with security window film that covers any glass components, or a manner that uses a steel rod or cable capable of being locked and secured. This is a common way. There's no reason that this shouldn't be under the law, so I'd ask for a vote on this amendment.
All right, let's hear from the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. It undermines the purpose of the bill by weakening the security measures that need to be put in place. So this shatterproof glass is essentially, it's a film that would go over glass. It's not as fortified as bars, security screens, commercial grade metal doors, grates, or other physical barriers approved. So I would ask the body to resist the amendment.
All right, on the amendment, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. 29 votes in the negative, Senator's amendment fails. Senator has another amendment. Collect the amendment. Senator may explain the amendment.
Yeah, one of the common methods that they use currently and that they've invested money into is security window film. This is not one of these technologies that I'm super familiar with, but if you talk to people that actually do this, if we were able to have them come in the committee and hear out the testimony, but one of the things they said was security window film is one of the important things they've used, they've invested money in, it works, and I would move this amendment.
All right, Senator moves the amendment from the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, this is the same argument as the last time, that it undermines the security measures that the bill calls for as less stringent, less fortified, less secure.
All right, on the amendment, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 30 votes in the negative, Senator's amendment fails. Senator has another amendment. Senator may explain the amendment.
It's a pretty easy amendment. The secretary, in this case is state police, may establish alternative methods for a licensed dealer to secure a premise or firearm if the licensed dealer is unable to comply with the requirements or section for a retail location. So basically, if you look at it right now, if you notice through the amendments, I went through and I walked through all the different things they use right now: shatterproof glass, the bars, the security film, cables. Well, now this bill, because we, the General Assembly, apparently know better, have written down bars, security screens, commercial grade metal doors, grates, and my favorite, we put physical barriers designed to prevent the use of a motor vehicle to breach all buildings. I'm not sure where practical. I'm not sure who's going to figure out if the Walmart or the person's home or things can have that in front of it. So I think it's just a common sense amendment. Say the secretary may establish alternative methods for a licensed dealer to secure a premise or firearms if the dealer is unable to comply. So basically, give the secretary some discretion outside of this bill. Quite frankly, technology changes. I mean, this thing has this thing in here talking about burglar alarm system that is continually monitored. I mean, it's somewhat of a 1980s term now. I mean, most people in their homes have one of those for $30 a month. So I think this would just keep with technology, give the secretary some flexibility, and ask for a vote on this amendment. Thank you.
Let's hear from the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Obviously, the secretary has the bandwidth and the latitude within the confines of the bill to promulgate regulations that can address new and evolving situations. So that flexibility is already there through the regulatory process. So I'd ask the body to resist the amendment.
All right, on the amendment, Chair recognizes Senator from the 34th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. No, I would disagree that the bill allows the secretary discretion. I mean, it's really unfortunate because this is one of the many firearms bills that judicial proceedings deals with, and unlike all of the other bills, this one came through with like grease lightning, we had there was no testimony from the opposition and very little discussion on the bill. It has an incredible number of questions. The drafting has not been through a very rigorous process. It leaves many questions, many doubts, and I think the least we can do is throw a bone to the industry that at least they would have an opportunity to ask the secretary to try to interpret this thing to make some sense out of it, because clearly the bill has serious challenges, and I think not allowing the secretary the latitude to say, well, maybe there's some other things we need to look at, because this thing really didn't see the light of the scrutiny that a bill of this kind should have received during the 90-day session. Thank you.
All right, we're ready on the question. Chair recognizes the senator from the 36.
Just a clarification, because I think this is important. With the floor leader yield. I know we put up an amendment that talked about Walmarts and sporting goods stores and things of that nature. Does this bill affect those types of locations? It does. So for instance, a Walmart now would have to have bars on the front doors?
So it's one of the five elements here on page 3.
So bars, security screens, that's something closing.
These are not ands, these are ors. So, and then if you have a continuously monitored security system, which of course they would, it's a Walmart, but it's just one of these.
One of the 5. So if it has a monitoring system, it does not have to have the other 5.
It has
or
to
still
have
does.
one of the 5.
So again, that's what I was saying. So it would have to have bars on a Walmart, or security screens on a Walmart, or commercial grade metal doors at the front of a Walmart where you can't, I guess, see into the Walmart. It would be closed down. Grates would have to come across. So a 120,000 square foot Walmart that has a small area in the back that's selling guns would have to have other physical barriers approved by a secretary, would have to have these types of things in a Walmart location?
That, or at the end of the day, when they're not operating during normal business hours, they have to lock their firearms in a safe or a vault.
And do they not do that already?
If they do, then they're covered and it's no problem.
And that can go for any location. As long as at the end of the day they lock their firearms in a vault or a safe, then they don't have to comply with any of these other things.
That's correct.
That's what's accurate. Okay, thank you.
All right, on the amendment, Chair recognizes the senator from the 34th district.
Yeah, thanks, President. I'm sorry, I just have to clarify here, because the way the statute's written is the Walmart would have to have at least one of the following, in addition to the recording devices, during business hours, not just after hours, but at all times. They would have to have installed on all exterior doors and windows of all the buildings where the firearms are stored, bars, security screens, commercial grade metal doors, grates, or, so one of these, bars, security screens, commercial grade metal doors, grates, or other physical barriers approved by the secretary. We have no idea what that means just yet. And it also has to have a burglar alarm. So yes, in response to the previous question, Walmart would have to install on all their exterior doors, bars, security, the screens that slide down, commercial grade metal doors, not those glass doors, or some kind of grating, or perhaps they can avoid that with some other physical barrier that we're not really sure what that is, that would be approved by the secretary. So as of now, because the secretary hasn't approved anything, they would have to have, your Walmarts will all have to change. They're going to all have to have either these bars or slide down metal grates or big metal doors on all of our Walmarts. That's the impact of this.
All right, on the amendment, any further discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 30 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails. Chair recognizes the minority whip.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have an amendment.
Yep.
This time I was able to share it.
On these golden rules in politics, every action has an equal and opposite reaction, just to be clear. All right, Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a pretty simple amendment. On the bill, on page 3 in line 22, we have a section of talking about other physical barriers, and we just want to insert or security measures approved by the secretary, and the reason for that is just giving that, we talked about flexibility earlier, but in this specific spot, we want to be sure that if there's a situation where someone's lease or property can't take some of these specific things, that you're giving that, you're just adding in that caveat, physical barriers or security measures approved by the secretary. That's the extent of the amendment. Move the amendment and ask for a roll call.
All right, on the amendment, floor leader sees it as an unfriendly amendment. Any further discussion? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 30 votes in the negative, the amendment fails. Chair recognizes the chair of the committee.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to suspend the rules to have two.
We got to take it to third. Any further amendments? If there are no further amendments, House Bill 1021 is ordered passed to third reading. Chair recognizes the chair of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules to have two readings in one day.
Senator moves to suspend the rules for two readings in one day. Are there any objections to the senator's motion? Chair recognizes the minority leader.
Yeah, can I just do a roll call on that?
Senator requests a roll call. Any discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 33 votes in the affirmative, the rules having been suspended, House Bill 1021, we will suspend the rules. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 1021, the Speaker, Public Safety, Licensed Firearms Dealers, Security Requirements.
House Bill 1021 is on third reading for final passage. Any further discussion? Yes, Chair recognizes the senator from District 4.
Yeah, thank you very much. You know, every action does have a reaction, and quite frankly, this bill came in, the public was not allowed, did not have time to come down and testify. There was no opposition that came in and testified against it. There were practical problems with this legislation that could have been fixed in committee with multiple common sense amendments. We sat in committee for an hour. I know nobody wants to hear this, but today's been the committee the whole day, I guess. So none of those amendments were allowed to get on this bill. Then the bill comes to the floor and we're jamming it through. So with all due respect, you may not want to sit here and listen to all these amendments. They were small technical things. Maybe they don't mean a lot to people in this body, but they sure may mean a heck of a lot to some guy who's going to go out of business because of this. It may mean a lot to somebody who's already invested their time and their money and something into a product. Somebody who's trying to run a business and doing the right things, and here we are, coming here from Annapolis, coming down with these regulations on them, telling them how they need to run their business, and when they come down here in the middle of the night and they try to give us some common sense amendments to deal with investments they've already made and to help them out a little bit, we say no. It doesn't fit the agenda, and it doesn't fit what we have to pass through today. This is the Senate of Maryland. We could have fixed this bill, and we could have done it correctly. So I'll be voting no on this legislation. By the way, this is not a big deal bill in a lot of ways. It doesn't really do a whole lot, but for a couple small retailers, it's probably going to cause potentially some problems. We could have fixed it. We could have done the right thing, but this is, quite frankly, a problem I've seen multiple times here, where one side demands it. We saw it earlier today, and now we've got to do it. We couldn't even do common sense fixes on it. So that's your reaction, Mr. President.
All right, on the bill, any further discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote?
Explain
Anyone
my vote,
wish to
Mr.
change
President.
their vote? Explain their vote. Chair recognizes the minority whip to explain his vote. Has 2 minutes.
Just to echo the comments here, there's a problem we have at times in this overall General Assembly where the people who don't have lobbyists, everybody thinks of the NRA and the gun lobby. We usually hear about that when we talk about firearm legislation. It's always thrown at people like me that are more pro Second Amendment. It's the NRA lobby. Well, the NRA doesn't lobby for these little small guys. These are little local people, and we're local small business owners. Almost all of them are extremely careful. It's their livelihood, and they're very secure, and they haven't had problems. There have been a couple specific cases where there were issues. Well, trying to tighten security regulations, I don't think anybody here really has a big problem with that. But the way things are done are important, and they matter. And sometimes people get brushed aside in the middle, and people or folks who maybe aren't all that powerful or kind of like we don't, you know, they're not the folks that really have a lot of weight. They can get brushed aside quickly, and we're supposed to have a deliberative process, supposed to be the cooling saucer. So that's, I'm voting against this bill, and I think we just need to be careful in the rush. I can't imagine, by the way, for the political reasons of rushing this through, I don't think there's going to be an issue from the executive on this. So it's, I'm sort of baffled why, like, why we had to rush it through. But anyway, I'm against the bill, and that's why I voted red.
All right, Chair recognizes the senator from the 38th District has 2 minutes to explain her vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. I won't need that long. I just wanted to share with my colleagues and friends that I actually had a couple constituents who did want to come up and be involved in the process. And so I regret that my constituents did not have that opportunity. Thank you.
All right, any further senators wish to explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 32 votes in the affirmative, the House Bill 1021, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. While we are on third readers, let's get these Senate bills. This is Senate Calendar 75. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 597, Senator Gazzoni, Income Tax, Theatrical Production Tax Credit.
Senate Bill 597 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 46 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 597, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 729, Senator McCray, Baltimore City Use of Highway User Revenues for Traffic Functions and Enforcement Modification.
Senate Bill 729 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 46 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 729, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 975, Senator Jennings, Property Tax Exemption, Disabled Veteran, Active Duty, and Surviving Spouse Application Process.
Senate Bill 975 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 46 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 975, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. We've got a special order third reader here, 78. Not sure if we're ready for this one. We may have an amendment. Special order calendar 78.
House Bill 438, Delegate Corman, Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, funding formulas, alterations, WMATA Dedicated Funding Amendment Act of 2022. Bill is on third reading for final passage.
All right, bill is on third reading for final passage. Chair recognizes Senator from Prince George's has an amendment.
Yep.
Collect the senator's amendment. Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a very important piece of legislation. I'm very supportive of the dedicated funding that we have for WMATA. But what this amendment does is that there is a significant project that has been worked on with the next series of rail cars. And for the last 18 months, I have been working to try to get some of the information about the local there was a requirement that there be a local economic benefit. And I have not been able to get that information. And all that this asks is that the fiduciary entity provide the reporting for that prior to release of certain funds.
All right, let's hear from the floor leader. Chair, from the floor leader.
Mr. President, how much? I'm first seeing this right now. Just give me 1 second to read it.
Let's do this. How about we hear from the senator from District 2?
That'd be great.
Question for the maker of the amendment.
Senator may proceed.
So what is it exactly you're asking for, though?
What I'm asking for is a report that would come from the vendor that would just share with us what has occurred in this RFP. Basically, the RFP had certain requirements for economic benefits. They have not been willing to share that information. We're just looking to receive that information back from them to better understand there were certain requirements in this RFP that be
So
given.
the economic benefits of the planned construction of the new factory and the
No,
location?
no,
or
no,
what?
no,
Okay.
no, sir, no, sir. It was an overall $2.2 billion.
Correct.
And there was a within this, and I must say, as a former member of the WMATA Board of Directors, I was a part of the process of putting together these requirements. Part of the requirements were that there be a local benefit, that there be a local benefit. It's only a portion of the larger contract. What I asked the vendor to provide was simply what those local benefits were going to be. They have not been able to do so. They have not been willing to do so over the last 18 months. It has nothing to do about anything specifically. It has to do about the larger way that they intend to fulfill the RFP that they have with WMATA.
So how are we defining local, when you're saying local benefits?
It's actually within the RFP itself, which is where it is dictated in the RFP that they must provide certain economic benefits, and that can include a variety of different ways that they can do that. They can do that through a building, through an assembly plant, through subcontracting, local business, hiring, local employees, providing job training, support for local business and initiatives. There's a whole list of ways that they could be responsive to the RFP.
All right. Thank you.
All right, let's hear from the floor leader.
I'm kind of looking through this for the first time. What does C mean? Explain to me. The Washington Suburban Transit District shall withhold 20% of the appropriation?
Absolutely. So
What
I'm
is
happy to
it?
explain what that means. So just as we do often here in this body, we will ask for a certain requirement to be fulfilled, and once that requirement is fulfilled, they will release a certain funds. It's similar to many things that we've done in the past. That's all that it is. The other thing that C refers to actually is the entity within WMATA. So the way that we are set up, we have our fiduciary, who is the Washington Suburban Transit District. That is how it's set up. That is actually our fiduciary. That is where we go through with regard to our funding for this dedicated fund that goes through that entity. It is our local entity that supports WMATA.
So the 20% with appropriation that's withheld, it would be withholding it from WMATA?
The 20% would only occur if they don't provide the report.
I know,
That's the only thing that would occur, is that it would be held back if they don't provide the report.
But it's holding back funds from WMATA?
Yes.
Okay, and so if we adopt this puts it in a different posture than the Senate bill that we voted on, right?
Yes, it does. I will tell you, I think that you have heard actually on this floor. Let me explain to you why this is the case. I asked this vendor, and I have continued to ask them to provide this information, and they have not done so until this day. You probably heard earlier when we were on the floor debating the senator from the delegation chair for Prince George's County who stood up and asked about this situation. We tried our best to be patient and to try to get response. They did not. That is the reason why it has occurred at this point.
So here's my sense is we'll adopt it as a friendly amendment. This is the second reader. This is a House bill, so if we have any concern, we can take it up.
I think it's on third.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay. All right. Well, let's roll with it then.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, so seen as a friendly amendment. Any further discussion? All in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Are there any further amendments? Any further discussion? If not, House Bill 438 is on third reading for final passage. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 34 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 438, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. All right, we've got some more third readers while we are on them. Calendar number 13, clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 28, Delegate Bondari, pharmacist, nicotine replacement therapy medication.
All right, House Bill 28 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 45 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 28, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 136, Delegate Kerr, education, public and non-public schools, seizure action plans, Brayley's Act.
House Bill 136 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 46 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 136, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 145, Delegate Crosby, state finance and procurement, prevailing wage, stop work orders.
House Bill 145 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 32 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 145, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 335, Delegate Foley, Maryland Transportation Authority, Easy Pass, disputes of charges and fees.
House Bill 335 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. 46 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 335, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 396, Prince George's County and Montgomery County delegations, Montgomery County Planning Board, open meetings, video and audio streaming, and minutes.
House Bill 396 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 46 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 396, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 397, Prince George's County and Montgomery County delegations, Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, Montgomery County, County Council and District Council voting thresholds.
House Bill 397 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 46 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 397, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 413, the Speaker, health insurance, individual market stabilization, extension of provider fee.
House Bill 413 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 33 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 413, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 425, the Speaker, public safety, untraceable firearms.
House Bill 425 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? Chair recognizes the Senator from Montgomery County has 2 minutes to explain her vote.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to explain my vote. First of all, I'd like to express my very heartfelt thanks to our Attorney General and to you, our Senate President, and our JPR Chair and Vice Chair, and especially my wonderful colleagues who came together in a bipartisan manner to get this bill out both in the House and the Senate like we are doing today, and particularly groups like Moms Demand Action, Everytown, Brady, Marylanders Prevent Violence, Gun Violence, Giffords, and other organizations, stakeholders, our wonderful law enforcement and our state's attorneys who came together to pass this bill to ban ghost guns that don't require any serial numbers or untraceable and don't require background checks, and unfortunately are used increasingly as a weapon of choice for violent criminals and domestic abusers and those that are banned from having guns under the law, but most disturbingly, children, which is easily accessible. They can just use a credit card to get it on the internet. And unfortunately, in my county, they've been used to kill and also to shoot other individuals in their schools. So I have to say, our hearings revealed that there's been a huge surge, not only in the country but in Maryland, of these ghost guns, and it's led to very terrible gun tragedies, and which has devastated families. And we always hear our fellow elected officials saying that when we hear about these ghost gun incidences and where people are getting hurt and there's families being shattered, that we send our thoughts and prayers. But the victims of gun violence, they do not want our thoughts and prayers. They want us to take action, and that's what we did when we passed this law. It's common sense legislation that will keep guns out of the hands of those who should not have it, and also help our law
Senator, time,
enforcement.
2 minutes has expired.
Okay, solve crimes and help our prosecute
Thank you, Senator.
those crimes.
Thank you, Senator.
And keep our community safe. Thank you.
All right, any further senators wish to explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 33 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 425, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. All right, we've got another calendar.
Mr. President.
Yes, Chair recognizes Senator from the 37th District.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Senate Bill 1021 on the vote to suspend the rules to have 2 readings in the same day. I want to go from green to red. Thank you.
Green to red. Do we have that? Without objection? Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Senator from District 30.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. It seems my button did not work on the last bill, and I would like to be recorded in the green, please. House Bill 425.
425 in the green. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Chair recognizes Senator from District 11.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. On House Bill 1021, I'd like to change a vote on an amendment. The amendment number is 163726/1 from red to green, please. I'm sorry, from green to red, please.
Okay. 163. Can you read one more time?
163726/1.
All right. Any objections? Without objections, so ordered. All right. We're on calendar number 14. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 448, Delegate Smith, State Board of Cosmetologists, Licensees, Supervision of Apprentices.
House Bill 448 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 46 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 448, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 571, Delegate Rosenberg, Access to Counsel and Eviction Special Fund Alteration.
House Bill 571 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 44 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 571, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 580, Delegate P. Young, Maryland Transit Administration Police, Collective Bargaining, Supervisors and Sergeants.
House Bill 580 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 32 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 580, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 609, Delegate Pena Melnick, Local Health Officers, Removal Grounds and Process.
House Bill 609 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 38 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 609, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 641, Delegate Atterbury, Income Tax Theatrical Production Tax Credit.
House Bill 641 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 46 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 641, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 716, Delegate Lehman, Patuxent River Commission Membership.
All right, House Bill 716 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 46 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 716, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 807, Delegate Queen, Real Estate Brokers, Salespersons, and Associate Brokers, Continuing Education Courses, Verification of Identity.
House Bill 807 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 46 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 807, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 1362, Delegate Prettyman, Baltimore City use of highway user revenues for traffic functions and enforcement modification.
House Bill 1362 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. 46 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1362, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. All right. Good news is we're at the 50-yard line. So we only got 50 yards left. So Chair recognizes the senator from the 29th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to change my vote on House Bill 580 from red to green.
All right, red to green on 580. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Senator from District 4.
Same one, House Bill 580, red to green.
580, red to green. 580. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Senator from the 38th.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 571 from yay to nay.
Yay to nay, 571. Yay to nay. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. All right, let's do, do we have this amendment for the Senate bill? All right, let's pull the special order for 77. Clerk will read the bill. Senate Bill 860.
Senate Bill 860, Senator King, Property Tax, Community Solar Energy Generating Systems, Agrivoltaics.
All right, question is on the adoption of the favorable report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Senator from the 42nd District has an amendment. If we could collect the amendment, presuming has an amendment.
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
Senator can explain the amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. The body will recall this amendment. This amendment was accepted as a friendly amendment for the climate change bill, but when the bill went over to the House, the amendment was stripped out of the bill along with other provisions relating to schools. So because this bill relates to community solar, I'm introducing this amendment. It's identical to the amendment which was accepted as the friendly amendment earlier. It provides that when a new school is constructed by a local school system, the local school system shall consider whether the school should be constructed with solar panels on the roof of the school. And if they conclude not to construct solar panels on the roof, the local school system will provide to the IAC information regarding why the school system chose not to construct solar panels on the roof. This was a friendly amendment before. I think it was accepted unanimously. I believe it will be a friendly amendment this time, and I hope it will also be accepted unanimously.
All right, let's hear from the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. We would accept this as a very friendly amendment.
Excellent, excellent. Any objections to the amendment? Without objection, the amendment is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 860 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. We've got another Senate bill on a layover calendar here, 53. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 253, Senator Kagan, Occupations and Professions, Licenses, Certificates, and Registration, Immigrants.
Senate Bill,
Questions on the adoption of the committee amendments and the favorable report.
Senate Bill 523 is on, the question before the body is on the two committee amendments. On the two committee amendments, any discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The two committee amendments are adopted. On the amended report, any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Chair recognizes the senator from District 6.
Mr. President, the vote is still not on here for this bill. This shows what the vote is in committee.
We can ask the floor leader, probably has a report.
Thank you.
Let's hear from the floor leader.
Happy to provide that information. The vote in committee was 7 votes for it, 2 against it, and 2 of our colleagues were out sick. So 7-2-0-2.
All right, we are at We've got nothing before the body, so are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 523 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. We've got a layover calendar number 54. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 459, Delegate Clippinger, Juvenile Justice Reform. Questions on the adoption of the committee amendments and the favorable report.
All right, question is on the adoption of the two committee amendments. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The two committee amendments are adopted. Now on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 459 is ordered passed for third reading. Let's go to the concurrence. We've got several. Let's go to number 8, calendar number 8. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 275, Senator Hayes, Labor and Employment, Family and Medical Leave Insurance Program, Establishment, Time to Care Act of 2022, Finance.
All right, let's recognize the chair, floor leader on the bill to describe the House amendments.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 275 establishes the Paid Family Leave Insurance Program and Fund to provide 12 weeks of benefits to covered individuals taking leave from employment due to personal and family circumstances primarily related to a serious illness of the following or following the birth of a child. This is a bill that all of us are very, very familiar with, and it's a long time coming. The House made a couple of amendments, and I'll describe them briefly. The House amendments limits the contributions to employees with 15 or more employees, removes provisions related to the contribution rates and percentages, requires the department in consultation with stakeholders to perform recommendations of the rates of contribution, the cost sharing formula, and issuing an RFP for an outside contractor to administer the program, requires the department to set various rates by June 1st every 2 years, requires an employee to exhaust all employer-provided leave before receiving benefits, and requires a study regarding the capability and capacity of the department to implement and administer the program. Colleagues, the good thing, we passed the bill a couple of days ago now, and there was a lot of conversation open and publicly that the House may just do a study. I'm very proud to say that they've gone beyond that, and they've met us where we were and formed a program and a framework for a program to go in effect immediately. So with that, Mr. President, I would move to concur with the House.
The floor leader moves that we concur in the House amendments. On the amendments, Chair recognizes the minority whip on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Excuse me, on the amendments. Yeah.
That's fine. Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to maybe make us talk first and perhaps ask a question to the floor leader. But first, I'd like to just set the stage a little bit because we had this in committee, but it is a new bill as far as it's been amended pretty significantly from what we passed out of the Senate. In my view, it's another example of what the House did, first I'll say, what the House did was almost take the two extremes, the worst of the two extremes. They kept part of it being studied, but then they decided to implement part of it and wipe away key safeguards that we had in the bill that left here. I think this is another example of what we've been seeing today in the last couple days where the House sends something here and it's like, this is it, take it or leave it. We had an extensive debate and discussion in our committee about this, and a close vote. The vote was 6-5, and I think some of the 6 were pretty uneasy too, candidly. But I can't speak for everybody. There are a lot of unanswered questions with this bill, and a couple things that are very concerning. So I wondered if maybe my friend and my seatmate committee, the floor leader, would be willing to yield for a question or two.
Yes, Mr. President.
Senator may proceed.
Thank you. And I know I know you've worked hard on this issue and it's important to you and it's something that you care deeply about, and I appreciate that. I really do. And as you know, and you and I have discussed, or as we've discussed, Mr. President, I understand the desire to want to do something on this issue. The first question I would have is, as this bill left here, in the bill we passed, the assessment, we call it a payroll tax, you all want to call it assessment, the assessment that was put on the each paycheck of every worker in Maryland was going to be capped at 0.75%. Is that correct?
Correct.
Does that cap still exist in this bill?
No.
Is there any cap at all?
No.
So this is being enacted with no cap, and it can be set by who? By the Secretary?
Correct.
Okay. Of the Secretary of Labor. Thank you, Secretary of Labor. With really no limits in the bill. Secondly, there was a 75-25 split on the bill that left here between that the person who would be getting the benefit, the employee, would contribute 75% towards the fund. The employer would contribute 25%. That is gone now as well.
Correct.
Is it set at a particular percentage?
No, but there are limitations that they can't go beyond what we set and left here. And so the guardrail of what we set, the 25-75, they can't go beyond that, but there's no set split as it left this chamber.
Well, they can't go beyond 25-75 one way or the other. So
Correct.
The job creator might be at 75. And that's set by the Secretary as well?
That is set by the Secretary, but here's the thing, colleagues. So the bill that we have before us, one, I would tell you, my colleague stated that this is a completely separate bill, completely different bill. I would say 95% of this bill is the same bill that we passed here in this chamber. What the House did was they allowed an opportunity to get more information in the interim before we come back next session, to get the actuary study, to set up the framework of the program, to give the actuary, I don't know what they call the people that perform actuaries, but those people, the professionals, to look at a framework and give us the best information that we could possibly have to make decisions along the way. And so a lot of this information will become available to us prior to us reconvening next session.
If I could labor to ask another question or two, Mr. President, thank you. I do think this is very important. So one of the other things that we originally had was that in a lot of the rate setting and a lot of the setting of what would be happening with the program, the Secretary was going to make those determinations. Even in the bill we sent out of here, we were putting caps on how much money could be taken out of people's paycheck every week, and caps on how much the job creators would be charged versus the folks who are working. Those are gone again, as we've mentioned, all gone. But the Secretary also was going to be making a lot of determinations, and now we've added in something called Secretary and relevant stakeholders. Is that correct?
Correct.
Do we define who the relevant stakeholders are in the bill?
No, but the original bill named some of the stakeholders as being, what's that organization? NBIF or something like that. The Chamber of Commerce, NFIB, right. And the bill is a lot broader in its description and just saying relevant stakeholders.
Right. So it's silent on that. It could be any number of people having an impact on the discussion of how high the rates in everybody, how much is going to be charged in everybody's paycheck, how much employers and job creators will have to put out. So that's clear in the bill. There's some other interesting language here. One of the other interesting items, and that's probably will be my last question here, Mr. President, is one of the other interesting items, and I wonder if my friend could comment on this. At the end of the bill, it talks about how this whole bill is setting up this framework, and of course we had an extensive debate on the bill about how we thought it was wrong to set up a government framework when we're going to maybe be delaying implementation and doing other studies. We've had that debate already. That's what we kind of thought was going to come from the House, was doing a study on all this first, which would have made a lot more sense. But what the bill at the end talks about is that we're still setting it up. It's going to be Department of Labor. There's also going to be a DLS study about whether the Department of Labor can handle this. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Why are we saying definitely Department of Labor is doing it and then doing a study? Why wouldn't we just have DLS study whether the Department of Labor can handle it? Because there's been occasional challenges with Department of Labor. They've been working through some issues from time to time. So I was curious if that didn't come up in the committee. It wasn't in any of the bill. That was never came up in any bill hearings we were part of. So I was just curious if you could comment on that or give us some thoughts on why we're kind of doing the cart before the horse.
No, and I appreciate that question. I think, Mr. President, just to my colleague's point, we set up the program so the Department of Labor can handle it. The House wants to evaluate and explore other options that may be available. Each state administers program in different ways. Some have private entities, some are administered by the government. And I think the House wanted to put a couple of more options on the table to explore so this legislative body could have the opportunity to receive that information, review it, and make informed decisions on how we move forward.
Thank you. I appreciate the answers to the question, truthfully. Thank you. Mr. President, just in closing, my comments on this, number one, I think we should absolutely not concur with the House amendments. And by the way, if you vote to not concur with the House amendments, I don't think the bill is dead. We just need to go back to work on it because there's a lot of unanswered questions in this bill. Interestingly enough, we just had a debate about another issue where we were allocating millions of dollars a year to an outside organization to implement training programs. It's sort of funny to me that we don't want to maybe instead of saying the Labor Department's going to do it and then we're going to study figuring out how to do it, if they can do it, maybe it would have been smarter to put in this bill some of similar language that you could give maybe an outside entity that has experience in this area could be tasked with it. That's just an editorial comment. But this bill has a number of big changes to it. Really, we were shown this. We got this reprint in the committee a few minutes before we voted. And we did walk through it line by line. So I credit the committee staff for being very diligent and working with us, so I'm not being critical there. But some major changes to this, and it wipes away some very clear guardrails that were put in the original bill. So as I said, it's, again, the House kind of dictating to the Senate, and it also is almost the worst of both worlds where it's delaying it for a while, but it's also implementing it with no of the guardrails for the payers, the employees, or the job creators who have to pay into it. So, Mr. President, I would urge the body to not concur with the House amendments. Thank you very much.
All right, on the House amendments, any further discussion? Chair recognizes the Minority Leader on the House amendments.
Thank you. If the floor leader would yield for a couple questions.
Sure.
I had the opportunity to listen to your Finance Committee since we got out, and I heard some of the debate on this concurrence. And some of the most pointed questions came up about the number of employees. And I remember I was out here debating a couple weeks ago and saying, why don't we have these in here? And the floor leader at that time was saying, look, those states that did that, it took a lot of money off the table, and that's why some didn't do so well, and it would raise the rates for others, et cetera. So I guess this is for 14 employees and under would be exempt from this. How many employees does that constitute in Maryland?
I can't give you a direct number, but also if you indulge me for a minute. So this only relates to the employers. So employers that have under 14 employees, they will not be required to make a contribution to the program, but the employees will have the opportunity to participate in the program. Obviously, as an employee benefit, we want to see that to happen. And to your point, the pool of funding that's generated from this fund will help support those small businesses. As it's, I think that there was a common concern in this chamber as well as the other chamber that some smaller businesses, mom and pop shops, may not be able to, that it may be a burden or a barrier on them. I believe that the House tried as best as they can, and at the end of the day, when you talk about a contribution from the employee versus employer, we're talking about $1.52.
Right, but what we heard previously when we sent the Senate bill over there is that we as a body did not want to do that because that would underfund the program and bring the rates up for everybody else. So knowing that was our concern, it sounds like the committee doesn't have an idea of how many employees that will impact or employers, and then thus not knowing how much money we're losing in this plan. Is that correct?
Right. Committee staff has learned that it's not that significant. And as I said, to monetize it, we're talking about $1.52.
So can you share with us what committee or council said that's not significant? I mean, that's a vague term. I'm sure they made that off of some number they heard.
Please hold. Right, taking out what I've heard from committee council is taking out the small employers would not affect the fund because their employees are still contributing.
But I believe, as you brought up, it was brought up in committee, was that it's like 25% the employers will not be putting in from all those businesses. Do we know how many businesses will fall under this category?
No.
Okay, so we don't know how many employees, we don't know how many companies this applies, and we've taken off the cap, correct?
Correct.
So we've done that with the fund, and I heard in the committee it was, talking maybe go up 4%, 5%. And if you raise that rate compared to what we sent over from the body, we were talking about $1 billion payroll tax. If you do 4%, that could be up to $4 billion payroll tax. It just seemed that a work group studying this information, instead of passing something with all these unknowns and then coming back and say the next legislature that's elected will figure out all the details, would have been a better approach. I guess that's all the questions I had for the floor leader. And Mr. President, I mean, listening to the debate in committee was eye-opening. I heard things like, we don't know how much this is going to cost. We won't know until next session. These amendments screw everything up. And these were from people that voted yes on the bill. I just have real concern that we probably should have passed a bill called Time to Plan instead of Time to Care. And I don't think this is the best product that we could put forward. So I would urge us to not concur. Thank you.
All right.
Mr. President, the only thing that I would say to my colleague, and hopefully it might be helpful, one of the reasons why we are setting up the infrastructure for this program and providing for an opportunity to study it, because you can't really give a informed estimate if you don't have the programs by which the professionals go by providing those estimates. So we will have that information, and the adjustments will be made once that information is before us.
All right. Chair, we're going to send Senator from District 7 on the House amendments.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, there's a saying that don't let perfect be the enemy of good. And I understand that when we work down here, we work very hard to make every one of our bills perfect, but we know we can't. Eventually we give up and, pass it on third reader, and maybe next year we'll have to amend it. This bill is nowhere close to even being good with what came from the House. And I understand what the idea behind the legislation is. As a business owner myself, I've had employees take off. I understand it. I had problems with the bill, but it wasn't as horrible as some had thought. I think we really worked hard in our committee. As Mr. President, you said the other day how the Senate works very hard to amend our bills, get them done right, and that's what we did. We didn't always agree with it. Everything came out of it, but it was passed, went to the House. What's come back, and you've had a couple questions that have, I think, opened a couple eyes here. One, in the Senate, we decided, hey, it's not going to tax or not going to put more than 0.75% of the employee's salary into this. Now there's no limit. It's going to go wherever it needs to make sure that it pays the base fund that has to be paid. With that, we've heard the discussion about now small businesses are taken out. And I thank you for it. Small business is tough. But those businesses that aren't paying that fair share, which we don't know the number, we've heard it could be up to 10% of the businesses out there, somebody's going to have to pay that share. It's going to go on the backs of the employees. They're going to have to pay it. Another issue that came out of the committee was we decided that employers would pay no more than 25%, the employees would pay 75%. The House sent back language that is very confusing if you read it. I don't know what pages it's on, but it could be as low as 25%, but as high as 75% for both. Either way. So it could either be the employee pays 25, business pays 75, or vice versa, or it could be 50-50. it's just not fair to what we're doing. We're pushing this bill as quick as we can to get it upstairs. Mr. President, here we are at what's it, 7:10. I think tomorrow afternoon is when we have to have everything up there. My issue is, why don't we just take a minute, not accept this concurrence, go to conference, get the House to sit, talk to us. Maybe we can make some of these changes and fix them. But we're not. We're giving up. We're throwing in a white towel and saying, yep, let's just take it the way we can and send it up there. You know, we have almost 24 hours before we have to have this thing upstairs. We have plenty of time to work with the House and at least try, but we're not. We're giving up. And that's what's frustrating. When we voted this today, I was furious because I love my job down here. But sometimes it does get tough when people are just like, nope, they close their ears, let's just vote it and get it moving. And that's what we're doing with this. We're taking an imperfect piece of legislation that we know has huge problems. We don't know the numbers. The floor leader could not answer any of the questions with the numbers. And we're going to pass it anyway and get it upstairs. You know, the saying is, you know, you're flying a plane while you're building it, and that's what we're doing here. And the minority leader, when he talked about listening to the voting session, one of the things that was said was hot mess from some of the people that voted for this. And it is. This bill is a hot mess. And it's, my issue is, and I ask each and every one of you, don't vote for the concurrence. Vote no. The bill's still alive. It means we're going to go to a conference with the House and try to work out some of these problems. Let's not surrender. Let's be the Senate. Let's fight hard and try to do what we think is right. Thank you.
All right, are there any senators who have not yet spoken who wish to speak? If not, let's hear from the floor leader on the amendments. Senator, wish to be recognized, or are we good to go? All right.
We're good to go.
On the concurrence, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 30 votes in the affirmative, the House amendments are adopted. Senate Bill 275 is now again before the body on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? Chair recognizes the senator from the 40th District has 2 minutes to explain his vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. This has been a long time coming, and I just want to thank all of my colleagues here and those in the House that have contributed to this very important piece of legislation that will help Maryland families. But behind you, Mr. President, you can't see them, but there's a group, a smaller group and representative of the coalition of folks that have come together and really advocated on behalf of Maryland families and made sure that they had the opportunity, if life comes at them, like the President Pro Tem said earlier this session, if life comes after them, that they will have the things available to them to help them provide for their family. And so it's a really important piece of legislation. I know philosophically there are some differences about how we get there, but I believe that we should be really, really proud of the work that we did this legislative session. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Clerk will take the call. With 31 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 275, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 708, Senator Lamb, Maryland Department of Health, Office of the Inspector General.
Chair recognizes the chair or vice chair of the committee on the House amendments. I think we just voted on the bill. On the House amendments.
Or do we have the House amendments? Senate Bill 708 establishes a compliance officer within the Maryland Office of the Inspector General for Health to ensure that units and employees of Maryland Department of Health comply with best practices, public health, and government administration and laws and regulations. The House amendments increase the time for the Inspector General to respond to a complaint and specifies when a response is not appropriate during an investigation. We move to concur.
All right, the chair moves that we concur with the House amendments. Any discussion? All in favor of the House amendments say aye, opposed nay. The ayes have it. The House amendments are adopted. Question now, Senate Bill 708 is now before the body on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 31 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 708, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. All right. Let's see, he can wait. All right, we are going to, yes, Chair recognizes the senator from the 9th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. Could I change from red to green on 708?
Red to green on 708. Any objections? Without objections, so ordered. We are going to adjourn this legislative day to start a new legislative day. So we don't have any announcements before we do that. Let's do a quorum call before we adjourn.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. With 46 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland remains in session. Chair recognizes the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate of Maryland stand adjourned until the next legislative day.
At
For
7:17.
At 7:17.
Without objection, so ordered. All right. You get 1 minute. Of
so it's 15 and
I mean, we gotta get.
it's 15, 16. What do we have to do? So, excuse me. I know you don't support that constitutional amendment. Will you vote with us just to suspend the rules so we can get it over with? Okay, thank you. Nicole, can you, Nicole?
Okay. All right, let's go ahead and call the Senate to order. Sergeant Arms will secure the doors. Members, please take your seats. We will substitute the invocation from way earlier today. For today's invocation, if the clerk could please call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their presence in the chamber? If so, the clerk will take the call. With 46 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland is now back again in session. We're at the 25-yard line. 25-yard line. Let's go to layover calendar number 57. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 1, Delegate Clippinger, Constitutional Amendment, Cannabis, Adult Use and Possession. Questions on the adoption of the committee amendment and the favorable report.
All right, question is on the one committee amendment and the favorable report. On the amendment, any discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 1 is ordered passed to third reading. Let's do Senate third reading calendar number 15. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 17, Delegate Polakovich Carr, Campaign Finance, Recurring Contributions and Donation Requirements.
House Bill 17 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 46 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 17 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 147, Delegate Charkoudian, Maryland Farms and Families Fund, Maryland Food and Agriculture Resiliency Mechanism Grant Program, and Maryland Farm to School Meal Grant Pilot Program Alterations and Establishment.
Longest title of the year. House Bill 147 is on third reading for final passage. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 46 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 147 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 227, Delegate Harrison, State Government, Legal and Employee Holiday, Juneteenth, National Independence Day.
House Bill 227 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 46 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 227 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 511, Delegate B. Barnes, University of Maryland, Institute for Public Leadership Establishment.
House Bill 511 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 40 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 511 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 837, Delegate Clippinger, Cannabis Reform.
House Bill 837 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain
Mr. President.
their vote. Yes, Chair.
Explain
2
my
minutes to
vote.
explain his vote.
Yeah, thank you. Voting against this bill because it is we just did the Senate bill. This is the hodgepodge that we spent a good bit of time debating that, again, once again, would be better if we spent a little more time making sure it's right. We also don't have to pass a constitutional amendment. We could just pass this without that in it, so it would be the law. But that's why I'm voting red.
All right. Any further senators wish to explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 30 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 837 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. It's like a Lamar Jackson pass right to the end zone. We have gotten to the touchdown. All right, so the desk is as clear as it's going to be at the moment. Any committee announcements before we do a quorum call? Anything in the morning? Chair of Finance?
What time are we coming?
10 o'clock. 10 o'clock? 10 o'clock tomorrow.
Okay. Well, then Finance will meet at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning
9
for
o'clock
voting.
for Finance. All right. Chair recognizes the Chair of Nope. Budget and Tax?
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock for Budget and Tax. That's AM, not PM, correct? Okay. All right. Chair recognizes the Chair of Judicial
9
Proceedings.
a.m. for voting on a bunch of concur and not concurs.
All right. Any other committee announcements, other announcements? Yes, Chair recognizes the Senator from Montgomery County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know the time is late, but if I could just take a moment to recognize Transgender Day of Visibility. In 2014, we passed the Fairness for All Marylanders Act. I voted for it. Mr. President, I know you voted for it as well. Since then, we have continued to expand transgender rights, respect the inherent dignity of every Marylander, and build a more inclusive state. Thank you, Mr. President, for allowing me to recognize this important day.
Thank you for that observation. Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the Senator from Baltimore City.
Thank you, Mr. President. We were meeting at 8:30, but because the committees are meeting at 9, we're going to do 8 a.m. in the morning, colleagues.
Move unfavorable. Chair recognizes the Senator from Prince George's.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. The Prince George's senators will have their meeting tomorrow morning at 8:30.
8:30. 8:30. All right. Anything else? Anything else? Let's do a quorum call before we adjourn.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. With 46 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, Senate of Maryland remains in session. Let me just say thank you to the Secretary's office. I know this was a very, very long day, have been doing remarkable, remarkable work. Thank you, Secretary of the Senate. You all have been phenomenal. I know it's been a long day, everyone. Tempers are high. We're going to get through it. We got 10 more days left. We are almost there. So, Chair recognizes the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate of Maryland stand adjourned until Friday, April 1st at 10 a.m.
Without objection, so ordered. Stay safe. Have a great night.